Matt Walsh has dropped a Twitter thread outlining how Fox News is forcing pride indoctrination on their employees. And oh boy, it is particularly graphic. We got that story around the same time, interestingly, that Fox was reprimanding an employee who called Joe Biden a wannabe dictator. And then 24 hours later, this individual resigned. We're learning a lot about this from Tucker Carlson, but I have to wonder if there is something going on. There may be an overlap in these stories. What I can say is we here at Timcast do have some privy to information as it pertains to this story and what's going on at Fox News. And so we're going to be able to talk quite a bit about it in the context of what Matt Walsh has released, as well as what we know and how we know it. So I think this should be particularly interesting. We'll talk about that. Plus Joe Biden snapping at reporters once again because he's being accused of being the big guy. How come you're being called the big guy by these executives? What a stupid question. He's not particularly happy about that. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, last night in the members only section, become a member at timcast.com. Go to timcast.com, click join us. Go to the sign up for the Discord. Join our members only show. We'll have one up tonight at 10 p.m. But the reason I bring this up right in the intro is someone informed us that Yingling had sponsored an all ages drag show. And we looked into it. It's true. A little more complicated, but Yingling sponsors a venue that is hosting an all-ages drag show, and this is a lot of people disappointed, but they deleted their tweet promoting the event. So we're going to break this story down and get into what's exactly going on with Yingling, because we're big fans of Yingling, and we'd be sad to hear. I mean, apparently the Yingling guys are big Trump supporters too, so I wonder what this is all about. Some are saying they've only sponsored the venue. They don't have anything to do with the individual events, but then they're still providing some kind of funding that allows these events to happen. So we'll get into that. But before we do, my friends, head over to castbrew.com. You got to buy Cast Brew coffee. That's right. Our coffee company. We're sponsoring ourselves. If you like coffee and you want really good coffee, everyone keeps telling us the Rise with Roberto Jr. breakfast blend is the best. And I got to agree. It's amazing. It's a light roast. We also have a dark roast Appalachian Nights. Go to castbrew.com if you would like to buy coffee from us. If you need coffee, you should buy it from us. Support our work and help fight the commies by supporting companies that don't hate you. And then, as I mentioned, go to timcast.com, become a member by clicking join us. But also, if you go to timcast.com, there is now a mobile app link. You can click that and we'll bring you to the mobile app section where you can download for Android the mobile app. The Apple app is not yet available only because we're waiting for Apple approval, and the apps are not yet on their respective app stores because we've been waiting months for approval from the mobile platform services. But in the meantime, we've uploaded the installation file directly to the website, so those that are on Android can directly install the app and watch the show through there. So definitely check out the mobile app at timcast.com. Smash the like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more. Welcome back, Daniel Turner.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you. It's been a while. Daniel Turner, PowerTheFuture.com, your favorite fossil fuel advocate and sheep farmer. So great to be back in
What's
studio.
going on with
Thanks.
these record low temperatures, Daniel? Have you noticed that?
It's all my fault. It's all climate change. It's all I am personally responsible for all of this.
For the record low temperatures?
All of it. High, low, storms, hurricanes, lack thereof. It's all my fault.
No matter what happens to the weather, it's you.
Yeah, it is. It is. I personally control it. The fossil fuel industry is responsible.
Could you cut that out?
I don't know. How much you got?
He controls the weather, Seamus.
Got like $30.
So just real quick, though, we've actually had record low temperatures. I keep getting warnings.
It was chilly today.
Yeah, I have on my computer. There's like a severe weather alert that I've been getting for the past couple of weeks, saying record low temperatures because it's dropping down at night to the 40s in like the high 40s, and that means like vegetation is going to start suffering. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's actually climate change too. Like no matter what happens,
yeah. And there are parts of the world. Hudson Bay is going through extreme highs. Southern California is going through extreme highs, and we're going through extreme lows. And this is Mother Nature, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Right on. Well, thanks for hanging out, Daniel. We got Seamus.
Thank you.
I'm Seamus. I make cartoons. I have a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes. We just released a cartoon today about Donald Trump being on trial for something Joe Biden actually did. If you guys want to check that out, I think you'll enjoy it. The audience really seems to be liking it, and we had a great time working on it.
Cool. And I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for timcast.com. I'm happy to be here.
Not Ian.
No, I'm not Ian, 100%.
This is not Ian today.
He's a one of a kind. We can't really replace him, but I am here to fill the seat.
Ian has phasing, which means
He has to shed his
there's,
skin
there's a
every
period where he
couple days.
phases out of existence into and out of. If you play Magic the Gathering, you know that reference.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say like sheds like a snake and he has to
Nope.
get in.
Nope. He phases in and out of reality.
He's
we
in
can't
a big
control it.
cocoon right now.
He molts
Phasing
like a
into reality.
crab.
Yeah. He molts like a crab, like Zoidberg.
That's right.
Well, I look forward to seeing his new exoskeleton. I'm Serge.com. I'm ready
You
to start
don't.
when you guys are.
Here's the story from the post-millennial breaking. Fox News promotes glory holes, child sterilization to employees, leaked documents reveal. Matt Walsh revealed the Fox Corporation, parent company of Fox News, is encouraging employees to celebrate Pride Month and all things LGBTQIA+. Come on, at a certain point, I can't keep reading all these letters. Now, I mean that seriously. Maybe just we just say like the Pride community or something. By giving money to groups that encourage sex changes for minors, reading books by trans activists, including books about children changing gender, gay erotica, and sharing children's books about gender transition with their children, and to attend activist Pride events. So this is the thread from Matt Walsh. He says, we've obtained internal documents from Fox News employees. Fox Corp is celebrating Pride by encouraging employees to read about glory holes, supporting a group that gives sterilizing hormones to homeless youth, and deployed woke AI to monitor everyone. This is a big, long thread, but I will just say this first and foremost. I can confirm this. Now, I can't confirm each and every intricate detail. What I can confirm is I have spoken with Fox employees who have told me exactly this. And I do believe personally that what was going on at Fox was well known in the media space among anyone who is considered to be libertarian conservative in this space. Not every single libertarian, but mostly the anti-woke, anti-leftist or whatever. If there's a conservative personality, I think most of them knew this was going on at Fox. And I think people just didn't want to call out Fox because then they would not be invited onto Fox to speak. They wouldn't get the airtime. Now, in the past couple of months, there have been some goings on where we became privy to this information. And the main reason we have not really brought anything up is, one, we didn't get leaked documents or anything like that. We just had testimony from employees. And we were asked to wait as a story was being prepared. And sure enough, bang, the story just came out. Matt Walsh dropping the documents. This is actually unsurprising. But I think what y'all need to realize is that Fox News is what can I call it? A hoax?
Well, I've said this before, right? CNN tells you what you're supposed to believe, and then Fox tells you what you're allowed to believe. If you're someone who genuinely can't stomach the nonsense that they're pushing over at CNN, you can go over to Fox and they'll tell you what's within the confines of socially acceptable conservatism. And the whole goal, I'm not saying it's an express or intentional goal of the people at the Fox network, but it just happens to work out this way, that they give you a much more brand safe version of the ideology and it kind of culls people. This is part of why Tucker Carlson was so dangerous to their status quo, because he was shifting the paradigm in an anti-establishment and a direction that was further to the right. And so he was saying things that previously conservatives would have been considered nut jobs for saying, because he was actually offering up a narrative counter to what the establishment was saying without simply making the argument that I don't like what CNN is saying, I don't like what Joe Biden is doing, but without actually promoting a substantive counter ideology, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so we had a whole conversation about this when he was forced out, but my point is Fox has always kind of been there to be CNN light in a sense.
Right. That's why no one cares about Hannity. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, like, people watch him, obviously, but when it came to the Dominion lawsuit, Tucker Carlson is the one that gets the boot. Tucker Carlson is the one that is getting silenced. The other personalities they have are acceptable, mainstream, harmless conservative values.
Yeah, like the establishment isn't that horrified if you talk about cutting top marginal tax rates by 5% or, whatever like economic policy is being proposed by the establishment Republicans. And cutting tax rates is not a bad thing to do. I'm in favor of that, but you're not going to get in as much trouble for saying that as you are going to for pointing out the transgender and LGBTQ agenda, or the fact that January 6th was almost certainly a Fedsurrection and there was federal involvement, the kinds of things Tucker was saying, which got him pushed off of the network.
Now, I wonder why it is. Anybody want to take a shot at it? How come we're only learning about it now? I mean, people at Fox News have been working there for a long time. This is not new stuff they're doing. They've been doing it for some time. So how come only now are we learning about it?
Well, I think a lot of people who work at the Fox network are not conservative, right? And so they wouldn't feel a need to blow the whistle on this.
I mean, this is not just not conservative.
Yeah,
this
no,
is
I hear you,
fringe,
but
far left sexual.
Agreed, but that's what the left has been completely taken over by, right? I mean, these are people who work at Fox. These are people who work in media who live in New York. We know what. I'm not saying that's everyone at Fox, but
maybe the argument that they're default liberals who don't pay attention and don't care. Mm-hmm. But if that's the case, then these people sitting by, well, this is the kind of stuff that gets pushed to them by Fox. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the very least, they could come out and be like, nah, Fox ain't conservative.
I think this could also be a case where the HR department is different than the rest of the employees, right? I mean, I've worked a lot of corporations where the HR department is sending out communiques and memos that the employees are like, what is this? And it's like, it's Steve from HR, and you just throw it away. I'm not saying that what's happening is good, but HR is one of the first places that the left has infiltrated.
It's true, but it's a little bit more than that. Matt Walsh continues, says, not all Fox employees are happy with this propaganda. That might be why last year Fox experimented with a solution to monitor employees' commitment to DEI. It's an AI platform called Escalera, which tracks employees' commitment to the cult of DEI. Fox leadership told employees to sign up for Escalera so that the AI could help them engage in activities that will deepen their understanding of identity and explore more nuanced D&I concepts. I just feels like aliens took over. Mm-hmm. You know, like there's like aliens being like, put the brain slug in your brain. And you're like, I don't know if I want to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's even creepier than that, right? I won't get into too much detail, but we all know that they're focusing on a different organ, and they're also focusing on children.
Yeah, I think this has been a very weird Pride Month, I will say. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the most memorable, at least in my memory. And I think part of it is, to your question of why are these documents being released now, I think people are ready to start this debate in a way they weren't in years past. I think for so long, especially when the conversation was about gay marriage, which it was increasingly popular, people were more willing to have conversations about LGBT issues in the workplace. And then when the T was added and it sort of became the most dominant letter, people became more resistant. And I think we're really seeing that play out now. And I will honestly give Dylan Mulvaney credit for this. I mean, Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light really kicked off a national debate over what we are okay with talking about and what we are okay with our companies promoting.
It could be the Pride Month to end all Pride Months, which would be great. It'd
be beautiful.
Right?
This is the last one.
Be the last one. And look how many corporations that June 1, they changed their avatars to the rainbow. And June 2, it was gone. They were like, all right, you got your day, which is kind of what you do on St. Patrick's Day and what you do on, you get your little one day in the sun. And if this is the Pride Month to end all Pride Months, I think a lot of people would be absolutely thrilled with that.
I think they would. I think people.
I'd be thrilled.
I mean, I can't. I've said this before on the show, but I can't imagine if you were part of this community and suddenly your entire identity is co-opted by this fringe movement. That would just be terrible. This would be the worst. And
it is.
I'm not surprised that a mega corporation like Fox is bowing down to DEI. I mean, I kind of don't trust anyone and expect that they all do this. I think it's hard for the American public because in many ways, there's no alternative to Fox. So to feel this level of betrayal is upsetting.
We will get into this story in a little bit later, but I will also mention that there was a tweet from an organization called Music Fest in, I think it's Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and they were advertising an all-ages drag show. I put out a tweet about it saying, like, what's this all about, Yingling? They deleted the tweet.
Oh, boy.
Internally in the newsroom, they were like, wow, I won't say the reporter's name, but they're like, man, it's been a rough month. It's been a rough Pride Month.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe this is the end of Pride Month. Because you had Major League Baseball got rid of their Pride logo within a day or two. Xbox did the same thing. You got Starbucks reeling from it, saying take the stuff down, not denying it. You've got Target losing market share. Bud Light they've been knocked down from the top spot. I got to tell you, if you got a marketing guy, if you've got a finance guy and they're walking into their executive boardrooms and they're going, look, we got to get our ESG score up. This guy's probably going, ESG, you're going to lose 30% of your market cap if you do this. And they're going to be like, yeah, but we won't get financing if we don't. Be like, what do you need financing for if you have no customers? And they're like, okay.
Washington Post had a funny article today about how the Bud Light deal was not necessarily about Dylan Mulvaney, but because there's a movement towards craft breweries anyway. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you guys are
Everyone's
so
drinking
good.
IPAs.
You guys are so good. Like, way to
I
come
love
to
small
that.
businesses too, but the ultimate spin doctors at the Washington Post are probably off on this one.
It was
Miller and
fantastic.
Coors are skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it said domestic beer is stagnating. And it's like, oh, that's why Miller and Coors are up 20 some odd percent.
This
Well,
is
they're craft breweries. People
That's
love
right.
those tiny little.
Miller, yes, very small.
Small
the
little
local.
scrappy startup Miller.
No one's buying it anymore.
No.
You know, I really do think we're at a point where most people know the media is lying. I got to tell you, man, I'm fairly optimistic because there are a lot of people I know who they consider themselves to be moderate, but for the longest time, maybe like a year ago or pre-COVID, really, but like during COVID and like into COVID, maybe a year ago, they'd be saying stuff like, "That's not true. You guys are crazy." Now they're going, "Really?"
Yeah.
When I say things, now they're just like, "We've seen enough." Like at a certain point, you just can't keep lying about everything and expect people to believe you.
Yeah.
People don't pay attention. They'll hear it and they'll say that's probably true. But at a certain point, they're like, "I don't know, man. Let me check." And then they do. It starts slowly with some people and then it starts ramping up. The more people that speak out, the more people are willing to speak out. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is, you know, we hear that story from Brandon Strzok. Have you heard his story before, the walkaway story? That he thought Donald Trump was mocking a disabled reporter. And so when someone challenged him, he was like, "Okay, I'll debunk this." And then he looks it up and sure enough, Trump was not. And that he said it physically hurt when he was watching it, like he didn't know what to do. Someone like that then comes out and people say, he's far right, he's grifting. That works for a little while. But eventually you're in the city, you're in Miami, you're in New York, who knows where, right? And you have a party and then everyone is basically in line with the corporate establishment narrative, except for like one or two people. And then someone says something in passing that's not true. And then one person finally stands up and says, "Nah, I looked that up. That's not true. Check, watch, I'll show you." And they're like, "Wait, what, really?" Eventually, people who are looked up to, or maybe of higher social status, start rejecting it, which creates a wave of more and more people stepping out and rejecting it. Then you get that inflection point, Bud Light.
Yeah.
Now everyone can see that woke is shriveling and failing. And now I'm hearing stories of non-political channels and like YouTubers and influencers for no reason just being like, "Oh, I'm not woke, by the way. Like I'm not into any of that."
Yeah.
Because they're worried about not being popular.
And there are some watershed moments that led to that. I mean, the Dylan Mulvaney, I agree with you 100%, was in this movement. COVID, I think it was when Joe Rogan said that CNN, when they said on CNN that Joe
Yeah.
Rogan was taking horse dewormer. And that's when Joe Rogan was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like this. And it was such a viral moment that everyone realized, oh, wow, CNN just lies about these things. And so, yeah, that's when the people in the crowd are starting to realize they're not telling us all the truth here, are they? And the more this happens, the better it is for society. But it's why platforms like this are important. It's why Joe Rogan's important. It's why alternative media is important.
Lying about Joe Rogan is a bold move.
Yeah, he has such a massive platform. He can so easily disprove it. And there were other ways that the media beclowned themselves through the COVID pandemic.
Beclown is a great word.
Thank you. I was hoping to get away with just throwing that one out there. But during COVID,
Nah, we'll laugh every time.
when the BLM riots were happening, when CNN published that article and a number of other outlets did as well, publicizing the fact that over 1,000 health professionals signed a letter saying that you shouldn't shut down these protests because of COVID-19 after they'd spent months telling you that you can't go to church, that you can't go to work, that you can't see dying relatives at the hospital, that you can't go to funerals for loved ones. That is when a lot of people woke up and said, "Oh, it was all nonsense. It was
I'm
all
waving
nonsense."
my fingers over here.
I'm seeing it.
You disagree?
I'm waiting for Seamus to complete his point so I can jump in, but I'm waving frantically over
He's
here.
been waiting this whole time.
They did not just say don't stop BLM protests. They actually said BLM protests stopped the spread of COVID.
Even better. It's amazing.
They
how that
actually,
happens.
let me just, I'll try and pull this one up.
While you're pulling it up, you know, it was the example of how many people were losing loved ones, and then John Lewis died.
Look, there we
and they were
go.
like, John Lewis can have a huge
Here we
funeral.
go. Look,
Everyone
I'm
could go
telling
to
you,
John Lewis's
Royalty get the
funeral.
Look at
perks, right?
June 30th, 2020, Black Lives Matter protests may have slowed overall spread of coronavirus in Denver and other cities, new study finds.
Amazing.
And at a certain point, someone just looks at that and goes,
Shut
hold
up.
on there a minute.
Shut
You can't just say it's a new study when you're like, "My opinion says."
I know.
I asked myself, and I said it was
insane.
fine.
Imagine being poor John Ingold, like when you had
Poor?
just or like pathetic, John Ingold. Like when you had to write that and just imagine
Had to?
staring yourself in the mirror and or was compelled to because he was so moved by the BLM.
Look,
And how it
riots.
stopped the spread. They were all vaccinating each
A
other
research
there,
team,
huh?
including a University of Colorado Denver professor. There was one professor on it.
and
It's
the
legitimate.
BLM staff.
When I'm a kid
Yeah.
and I'm watching the Batman animated series, I have a question. How does the Joker have henchmen, right?
Yeah.
Then I'm watching the Dark Knight movie, and then the Joker burns his pile of money. And he's like, tell your guys they work for me now. And he's like, they won't work for a freak. And I'm like, why would anybody work for this guy? He's burning all the money. And then you realize, why is this guy writing this?
He's writing
Because
it, yeah.
some people are just henchmen.
Yeah.
They just don't have independent thought. They stand there with drool pouring out of their mouths. And then their boss goes, hey, write a story that claims Black Lives Matter protests slowed COVID down. I was like, okay. Then he just writes it. It's like the dude may as well just be an AI at this point. Well, actually, fair point. We can probably fire all these people and replace them with AI.
With AI.
So
Yeah.
No, journalists and writers are very important.
No.
Hannah Claire, they're really not. They're really not.
I'm not
Oh, wait,
talking
I'm a
about
journalist
journalists and
now.
writers. I'm
Especially
talking
ones
about
from Timcast.com.
I'm talking about the biggest threat, the biggest industry under threat right now is the propaganda industry. AI is going to replace all these people. How do we even know this guy's real? For all we know, they started doing AI articles over 10 years ago.
So is that why they were always threatened
Yes.
by the term "learn to code"? Because it quite literally was going to replace them as journalists.
It was offensive because they're all actually an AI that does know how to code. And it's like, how dare you?
It was offensive because you're only allowed to talk to poor people that way, basically.
Well, yeah.
No. We're the working class need to learn to code because the market changes and the needs of the people shift over time.
Well.
I just get to have this job forever.
How about this? Now that all these news organizations are collapsing, we can tell them all to learn to mine.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mine cryptocurrency because that's the
coal.
future.
Just mine
I was
coal.
trying to save it.
Learn to farm.
Learn to farm. Yeah. Oh, it's not fun. Oof. Yeah.
Make food. Yeah, well, there you go. That's the media for you. But let's jump to this next story. Check this out. We have this from TV Line. Fox News issues cryptic statement in wake of calling Biden a wannabe dictator. Will heads roll? So we all saw this. Apparently, Fox News had a panic attack because I just absolutely love. Look, we just talked about the expose from Matt Walsh, how Fox is woke and pushing woke indoctrination on their employees. An employee made a chyron that said wannabe dictator, referring to Joe Biden. Fox News panicked because they were now being criticized by their peers in media. Because yes, the people at Fox News care more about the opinions of MSNBC and CNN than about their own viewers. So by all means, look, I can only say this. The people who watch this show are currently not watching Fox News. So,
Yeah, exactly.
how can we get that message to the Fox News viewer? But they put out this statement, and it was very, very, very vague. They say, the chyron was taken down immediately and was addressed. A spokesperson for Fox News told CNN in a statement, Fox admitted the message was inappropriate and that it had taken steps to address the situation internally, but declined to elaborate on specifics. Well, apparently they reprimanded the guy, the producer, who then resigned. I want to pull that story up, but I do want to mention one thing. I do think that chyron is inappropriate. Well, I'm sorry, inadequate. It didn't go far enough. That's what I meant to say. It didn't go far enough. And I think I often tell people this before the show, like, hey, make your arguments academic. Because an academic statement, and I mean that like a direct, intelligent sounding argument works so much better than a lowbrow insult. Wannabe dictator applies. Tucker Carlson put out a video at 6:30 today, hitting the nail on the head with the hammer about why Joe Biden is a wannabe dictator. But I think they could have put up a more powerful and serious chyron that no one could have complained about. It could have said, President speaks after unprecedented move of arresting main political rival. I mean, that right there, I feel would be substantially more powerful than just saying wannabe dictator. I don't feel that actually conveyed a good message.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I actually think it's much more powerful, as you touched on, when you have PBS, trying to quote unquote fact check Trump as he's speaking in a much more academic sounding way. But Fox is out here apologizing for this. How many times has CNN apologized for the chyrons that they had underneath Donald Trump,
But
right?
they're
So
not
I have a
sorry about
couple
those.
pulled. Exactly. And Fox shouldn't be either. So I have one here about angry Trump turning briefing into propaganda session. Trump trying to rewrite history on coronavirus response. Here's another one, CNN. Trump has no plans to claim any personal responsibility for inciting serial bomber, thus, of course, implying in the chyron that he should be accepting responsibility for inciting an actual terrorist.
Yeah, but the difference is the left and the right. I mean, the left are the ones that lay down in traffic over climate change. The left are the ones that go to the BLM protests and burn down St. John's Church. So the left does demand that we respond to what their philosophy is. The right doesn't. So the right looks at CNN and they're like, that's ridiculous. Give me a break. And they go about their business. So to a certain extent, I'm going to applaud the left for being as tenacious as you could possibly be, because they're not going to rest until Fox sends out the apology.
No,
and
I
they
agree.
got it.
Shout out to all the Antifa soy boys.
Yeah.
You know, we want to criticize them for being soy boys, but those are the guys that are screaming, foaming at the mouth, and going out and actually engaging in real world activities. Yeah. Meanwhile, Fox News, which is supposed to be opposition, is actually completely on board with everything they're saying and is only secretly, or is only on the surface, somewhat opposed to these things. I got to tell you right now, spread the word. Fox News should be done. Hands down. The fact that this stuff is now coming out, the fact that there's two big stories. One, that they're indoctrinating their employees with this crazy cult stuff. And two, they're bending the knee to CNN. CNN reaches out to Fox News, and then Fox is like, we took it down. Oh, whoops.
What are the
Why?
odds that
Didn't
this
mean to hurt your
producer?
feelings. Hope we can still be friends.
What are the odds this producer was like, I don't want to work here anymore. I'm going to run this crazy chyron. And they're like, we took care of it internally, because he's like, I'm quitting. So it doesn't, you can't touch me. I'm going to write this crazy thing and I'm leaving. Because that's what it feels like to me. Like, if you're the person who wrote this, you knew that wannabe dictator would get you in trouble, right? I mean, at the very least, even if they weren't as, even if they weren't giving in to the other side, they know it's unprofessional. They know it's not blah, blah, blah. I feel like this producer was like, I have one last shot to do something before I leave, and this is it.
If that was my one last shot, though, I would have come up with something better. Like, remember
He had to do it on the fly. He didn't have time.
The New York Post guy who hacked their homepage and wrote all those articles. Like, that's the way you go out with it.
That's true.
That's the way you go out in a bang.
That was flashier.
Right? Like, that was.
But maybe that guy had more
that was a
access
while
than this
ago.
one
That
did.
was a while ago, and I remember watching that in real time, saying that.
Yeah.
I was on the New York Post app, and I was like, that does not say what I think it
Shapiro
said.
didn't do that. He didn't say those things. Or actually, I'm
That's
sure a
the
lot
way
of
to
people
go
are
out
like,
in a bang.
Wow, Ben Shapiro's really pushing it this time. Yeah, for those that aren't familiar, there's a story where he was working at New York Post, right?
Yeah.
And he started just writing a whole bunch of crazy fake articles and attacking
Headlines. Yeah. Just stuff you can't say on this segment. Like, just way over the top.
Very crazy stuff. But that's not just quitting your job. That's saying, like, I no longer want to work in media and I want to go flip burgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I've won the lottery and I don't need this job anymore.
I mean, to be
I
fair,
got
they're
announced.
similarly qualified, right?
Flipping burgers?
Yeah,
make
we're-
fun of
I
burgers.
mean,
No, yeah, that's-
no, exactly. I'm not
wait,
insulting burger flip. It's true.
No,
They're
no.
underqualified if they're in media.
I'm not even saying this as a joke or sarcastically. Burger flippers have more skills than journalists.
I think that's probably true.
That is not a joke. I mean, you could probably argue that some of these reporters, writers, journalists, quote unquote, at these outlets know how to use a content management system, which is like, okay, there's some skill involved, but dude, learning how to log into a website ain't no big deal. Now, you want to talk about somebody who's got to make a burger to specifications? Come on. You take the average journalist and say, make me a medium rare burger, and they're going to screw it up. They're not going to know what to put in it. How much do you put egg or do you don't put egg? I don't even know how to make a burger.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go and rag on a burger flipper. They know how to make food. I don't.
What's going to happen is they're going to end up flipping burgers, and then when you tell them they got the order wrong, they're going to call you racist. That's basically the level at which they're qualified.
And
Or they'll Uber Eats it. They'll be like, no problem.
No,
I can fix
somewhere
this.
else.
But this really does bug me, right? There are people who flip burgers who get paid a lot of money to do it, more than many of these journalists, $200,000 a year if you're like a top level dude who makes the best burgers ever. But typically at that point, you have like a staff of chefs.
Yeah.
But there are people who work at great diners. They make real burgers with real beef, seasoned perfectly, and they get paid less than these people?
Yeah.
That is a travesty of American capitalism. I'm sorry. No.
I mean, people making burgers look, bro, it could be a McDonald's burger. They're bringing me more pleasure than these people are, right?
Well,
they're improving my life.
McDonald's is is like I would give McDonald's like a C minus. You know, it's like it's tasty. It's like, you know, you're drunk at night and you're hanging with your friends at 2 a.m. and, you know, if they're open, you can get a burger and whatever. It's like Turkey has these things called wet hamburgers. They're very much like that.
You don't turn on CNN at 2 a.m, you know, when you're out with your buddies.
But I want to say this in the utmost certainty. A person who produces cheeseburgers is benefiting society.
Yeah.
Unquestionably.
Oh, no doubt.
Somebody's got to go to work. They don't have a lot of time. They want to go with their family and just grab a burger and fries. I'm not talking about gorging yourself. I'm talking about a good cheeseburger, bacon maybe, caramelized onions. What do these BuzzFeed people produce? Listicles about celebrities?
I used to like their quizzes. When they were stuck to quizzes, I
Even
was
a
like,
bad
that sparks
cheeseburger,
joy.
though. I think even a bad cheeseburger has more to offer.
I agree.
Yeah,
It's sustenance.
But I will defend good writing. So I don't want to lump all journalists together. Like, you can still read an article in multiple outlets, and a very well written, a good writer is rare, and it's as good as a good burger, which is rare. There's tons of lousy burgers, and then you get a great one. There's tons of lousy articles, but every now and then you read one and you're like, that's a great writer, and that has value.
There's real journalism. It exists.
Yes.
James O'Keefe.
Just good writers though. But like I'm talking about like print.
No, I agree.
Print. Yeah.
The issue is that guy who wrote there was that article we were just reading, Colorado Sun, I think it was. It said BLM protests slowed the spread of COVID. Like that guy.
That's beautiful.
So imagine you went to a diner and you said, "Let me get a cheeseburger," and instead they brought you out like
a garden salad.
No. Garden salads have nutrients. They brought you out like scum from the bottom of a table, scraped off with a paint scraper and put on a plate, something completely inedible that smells terrible. And they said, "That's your food." Like, I can't eat that. And if you did eat it, you'd get sick. It would poison you. These people produce they produce brain poison. They want you to eat things that poison your brain. That's what they make. It is a net negative on society.
And then there's the combination of the gifted writer who's also poison. And I'm thinking of the guy who wrote the profile piece on Pete Buttigieg a couple of weeks ago.
Amazing.
When he walked me through an apse in the cathedral of his mind. I thought, holy cow, like that's a very beautiful poetic line.
We gotta get this guy doing something
I don't
else.
think Buttigieg's mind is a cathedral,
That's
bro.
like-
That's not the setting.
Just one apse in the cathedral of his mind, and I thought, boy, you're a gifted writer, and you're a total shill at the same time.
That would be like you going to a restaurant and ordering a cheeseburger, and they bring you out a steaming pile of feces and then put whipped cream on it. You're like, okay, dude, look, you've put whipped cream on it, please, but it's not sustenance. It is a net negative. So if you look at the holistic picture here, people flipping burgers, they're keeping us fed. Sometimes people eat too many burgers, and they should probably switch to the garden salad periodically. But you know what? The same diner where a guy, a little line cook, he's not getting paid as much money as these jerks in the corporate press, but they'll get you the food you need. Mm-hmm. And in the big picture, the people writing these articles that are lying are poisoning this country. Yeah, so when people say the corporate press is the enemy of the people, when Michael Malice says stuff like that, you look at the Washington Post trying to lie about the Bud Light stuff. This is what they do. They lie about everything. It is remarkable the degree to which they lie. But people are waking up to it. They're starting to realizing it's BS, and I'm glad to see it.
I also wonder if as dangerous as the lie is the omission, as when you will open up the Washington Post and they just don't report the story. It's everyone saw it. It happened yesterday, and they just ignore it. It's as if it didn't matter, and that I think is just as dangerous.
Well, exactly. So there was a YouGov poll in 2017 that showed 60% of Democrats believed that Russia actually tampered with voting tallies in the 2016 election. Now, no one in the media ever actually said that happened, but they just repeatedly said Trump, Russia, possible collusion. And it got to the point where this had been repeated so many times, your average person just took for granted that it happened. And then they went to the most extreme version of what they were hearing because, of course, no one in media was willing to clarify that wasn't what was happening. So even though they didn't say anything openly dishonest, at least the ones who didn't know that there was literally nothing to the allegations of collusion, they were convincing people to believe something which was totally factually inaccurate.
Let's give some credit to this Fox News employee. We have this story from the Post Millennial. Tucker Carlson reveals producer who called Biden a wannabe dictator was punished by Fox News and resigned 24 hours later. Good for you, dude. Good for you. Standing up. Just days after Fox News displayed and then apologized for a chyron calling Biden a wannabe dictator, Tucker Carlson slammed his former employer. Actually, I think legally current. I don't know. Is Tucker saying he was fired? Anyway, they go on to mention the chyron wannabe dictator. Fox's statement saying that the words were up for less than 30 seconds Inside Fox, the women who run the network panicked. Carlson said they first scolded the producer who put the banner on the screen, and then less than a day later, he resigned. He had been at Fox for more than a decade. He was considered one of the most capable people in the building. He offered to stay for the customary 2 weeks, but Fox told him to clear out his desk and leave immediately. The company then issued a public apology for the chyron that was on the screen for less than 30 seconds, stating the chyron was taken down immediately, adding that the issue was addressed. That was all true, but it was not enough to save Fox News from the ensuing scandal. For a time in the rest of the media, Fox's assessment of Donald Trump's arrest seemed to overshadow Trump's arrest itself, said Carlson. Carlson noted perennial MSNBC guest and full-time Ukraine promoter Alexander Vindman, who called for Fox News to be banned, on all military bases. It was a really great point brought up by Tucker Carlson, because all of the lies from CNN and MSNBC, and where was he to say that those networks should be banned from military bases as well? But here, I have an idea. I'm gonna give a shout out to Daily Wire, put them on the spot a little bit. We'll put Timcast on the spot a little bit. Let's see how many of the Fox News employees we can hire. The ones that don't want to work there, that don't agree with them, that actually care about American values, reject the lies and the manipulations. And I say the Daily Wire, in fact, I'm not really putting them on the spot. I think the Daily Wire should start poaching Fox employees right now. Just start hitting them up, and we'll do the same. You know, we'll if you're leaving Fox News, you don't want to work there anymore because they're full of it, because they're lying. We do not here at Timcast have any kind of DEI advocacy programs or requirements or anything like that. And so, yeah, there you go. Opportunity awaits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important. One thing
Is Freedom Tunes going to be hiring some...
Look, I mean, if artists want to reach out to us who are making animation that's decent and who we could bring onto our team, yeah, we're expanding. So hit me up. If you're like an artist, if you're a cartoonist who's qualified to animate, please send us a message. And also, if you're someone who wants to support the team that we have, who are artists creating non-woke content, creating conservative content, please become a member at freedomtunes.com. It helps us to keep everybody employed. But I want to mention here is that when Tucker was first pushed out of Fox, I was cautiously optimistic, and I knew that he was going to be fine, but I was a little bit worried because, as I mentioned earlier, Fox tells conservatives what they're allowed to believe. And having somebody like Tucker pushed out of the network means that Overton window shifts back to the left a little bit. And so I was concerned by that, but I'm glad to see that Fox, which is effectively controlled opposition, is starting to show its cracks, and the response to it is very decentralized. If you didn't like what the mainstream media was saying, for a very long time, Fox was your only option, at least for visual media, if that's how you were consuming news. Nowadays, you have so many different options. It's wonderful. There are so many different podcasters and journalists online who are delivering information to the people from their own angle, whether they're just not far left, whether they're a more traditional liberal, a conservative, someone who's further to the right. You have a lot of different people who are not all under one umbrella giving us information that we never would have had if it was just up to Fox.
I got an idea. Here's what we at Timcast will do. We will make mandatory employee training. Yes. And it will say things like, have you considered having a 4th of July barbecue and perhaps grilling and having a nice non-Bud Light beer? Have you considered reaching out to your friends and explaining why America is the greatest country on earth? Perhaps you should fly an American flag on your property. I think that's what we'll do.
I think we need to train out the implicit anti-white racist bias, and everyone who gets hired, we need to have presentations and stuff to sort
Hire
of
people from BuzzFeed.
brainwash them. Yeah. If you hire them from one of these organizations, you have to do it. It's a notoriously racist organization. It's racist against white people. Got to deprogram them.
It is something funny that I've thought about. There are people who worked for Vice and BuzzFeed, and I've tweeted like, I'm so sorry to hear you're getting laid off. You know, we're hiring and we're expanding and looking for people, so feel free to reach out. They never do, of course. But like, what's going to happen when there's no game in town anymore? When you're like a BuzzFeed writer with no skills, they're going to be voting for communism because the only thing they can do is write nonsense listicles and other fake news. All they can do is write the fake article they were told to write. But what are they going to do? There's going to be nowhere to work.
They're going to go to academia. That's where everyone who, fails in politics goes. I just think that's the only place for them.
But then what happens when the college bubble bursts, right? Because that's a very real possibility, especially with money getting tighter. If we see a massive economic crash, I mean, some of the first degrees
Joe
to
Biden
go are going to be these
forgive all your student loans. He'll keep that up forever.
Of course. He'll be able to continue to do it forever.
I'm not being entirely unserious. I mean, even with this Colorado Sun article that we're talking about with this reference, that journalist is quoting a study where he's like, and look, a professor at a university said it's true. I mean, these relationships between journalism and academia could be really powerful and strong. It could be a great way to get new information out there. It's just so often both sources are corrupt and therefore release terrible information that then the public is supposed to consume without questioning.
Well, totalitarian regimes always need their academic sounding lackeys. So in that sense, you'll always have the university system as it stands for as long as the regime continues to exist. However, every single individual person being pushed through it, I don't know that that's going to be sustainable. In fact, I know it's not going to be sustainable. It's a question of how many sacrifices the system is going to force itself to make in order to continue it. Because it's a very valuable tool, right? Not only do you have 12 years of government indoctrination, but you throw another 4 years on top of that, where people are being given an even more vicious and depraved version of the same far left ideology that kids are set up to believe in their first 12 years of education. And you end up with very highfalutin academic sounding serfs. So it's a valuable venture to them, but I really think at some point they're just not going to be able to afford it, and then there will be less professorships available.
Money's not a real thing, though. I mean, we just give huge loans from, what is it, 94% of all student loans are from the federal government that we then give to people to go into debt to then say we need more government to solve the problems I am now facing because I'm massively in debt and theoretically overqualified for jobs I don't really want anyways, which is causing me depression, which is causing me loneliness. Like, we are pushing people to a cliff. I don't say me specifically, I don't think anyone in this room, but the system that is currently in place pushes people towards a cliff that makes them desperate and makes them compliant.
Well, the amount of government money also pushing academia that will hire all these folks with government funds to do these studies. So that University of Colorado study probably got a $50,000 grant from the Department of whatever at the Colorado State House, and it just creates this cycle. I mean, $1.6 trillion had to go to something.
Well, I was just going to say the National Bureau of Economic Research has said this before, that universities respond to the widened availability of easy money and more people being able to get loans by raising their prices. So the whole thing does feed itself. But at the same time, those dollars, even though they can print as many of them as they want, they represent real world resources. And the more the economy contracts and the more difficult things get, the harder it's going to be for them to sustain it.
I think we do want to see cities die. I thought about this, and now I think, we probably should. Because we were talking about it last night in terms of how do you teach kids hard work. And I know you know this, Daniel, because you're a farmer and you've got animals. And I was telling the story where we had someone, I was showing someone the property, and we've got insane fruit. We've got mulberries. There's probably 700,000 mulberries just within like a couple hundred feet. It's bonkers. You look at this tree, it's just food for days. Yeah. You're not going to, survive on just mulberries, but there's Allegheny blackberry, there's apples, there's pears, there's walnuts. We got pawpaws. There is just food growing everywhere whether we want it to or not. And it's interesting that people who grow up in cities don't experience that. I certainly did. We had we had a plum and a cherry tree when I was a little kid. And so it's like, oh yeah, food grows. But people who live in these cities are attached to these corporations. They don't know how to survive without having a boss pay them money. And that was always something really crazy to me when people would say stuff like, I need a job. And I'd be like, no, you need to make money. Like, where's this disconnect? There were people in my life who would be like, I'm having a hard time because I can't find a job. And I said, okay, well then go do a thing to make money. But they don't know how. These humans have never experienced doing things on your own. They lived in a house where the food was just there. They got old enough. They got a job. The boss gave them the money in exchange for the work. And then when they lost that job, they said, well, now what? For me, my mentality was always, you don't need a job. You need to convince someone legally to exchange the money in their hands to your hands. Like, you need someone to have money in their hand to go like this, and then you take it and say thank you. Now figure out the safe, legal, and moral way to make that happen. And that is, you can trade stuff, you can perform. I was busking in the street, you can do fundraising, whatever. Yeah. But people in these cities have become weird mechanized laborers, and their existence they only exist to work for someone else. And that's, in my opinion, a very serious problem. And it's probably, if you look at the school system and how it's just basically churning out workers with this factory-like system where the bell rings and everything, I think that may be it. So you know what?
Well, even worse, non-workers.
Maybe now, maybe we just need these cities to actually fall apart so that people are forced to realign themselves with the world and then actually start, for one, realizing if you want food, you have to work.
Well, I think
you can make the food.
There's a huge problem, I think, with the younger, you young people with the younger generation, that the vast majority of them for a living want to be TikTokers or YouTubers. And not that we would ever make fun of YouTubers, right? Who would do things online.
I think they're idiots. I'm a journalist.
But you have to admit, like, what you are all bringing to the table is a certain skill set that people say it's worth my 2 hours right now, because the value I am getting for that is greater than, and it's not a money exchange, although there are members of Timcast.com, but it is a time exchange. I don't think a lot of young people see, well, what is the skill I am bringing? It's like, well, I want the fame, I want the notoriety, I want the clicks, I want the viewers. But what is the skill you are bringing to the platform? Whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube, whatever it is. Are you showing people how to lift weights? Are you giving people an idea of how to think about the world? It's like, no, I just want to be a YouTuber.
Well, I think
and that's the bad thing.
This is where the effect of decades of reality television are starting to set in, right?
Yeah.
People think, I want the fame, I want the clicks, I want the notoriety, I want the attention, and I want people to want to know what I'm doing and saying. And so they exchange their privacy for attention online. I mean, so many influencers are actually just kind of very serious, open bloggers, right?
Yeah.
They'll tell you everything, almost like they'll show you the pictures of their houses. They'll show you the inside, outside, their kids crying. Like, and if this is the way you want to live your life, I'm personally not comfortable doing that, but it does eventually, for a lot of people, turn into their own reality TV show that then brands are like, oh, we notice a lot of people like you, so we'll give you money. And they're able to cultivate a business off of selling their privacy. They don't sell a skill, they sell themselves.
Well, so this idea of people becoming decadent and lazy and cities dying eventually, it's certainly not a new one. And it makes sense, right? Because the family is the building block of society. And we see families follow this trend. When a family becomes extremely wealthy, usually within a few generations, that wealth is gone because you had a patriarch of the family who rose up from nothing and was able to develop a fortune for his descendants, and perhaps his sons build upon that and they accumulate an even greater fortune. But at some point, they end up having so much to the point where they're not as concerned with the economic consequences of not putting in the hard work that needs to be put in to maintain that kind of a fortune. They become lazy and decadent. They start spending that money without sufficiently adding to it. And within 2 or 3 generations, it's all gone. And I believe there are studies that actually show within about 3 generations, most family fortunes dissipate. Yep. So we shouldn't be shocked to see that happen on a larger scale with these cities. Many of them were extremely wealthy at one point, but what happened was the people became complacent. They became lazy. They became more concerned with consuming than producing, and that's why they're falling apart. We are just seeing the dissipation of intergenerational wealth on a broad scale.
The Rockefeller great-grandchildren are the ones who are probably my age, maybe a little bit younger, older, etc. So John D., I think one of the greatest Americans in the history of our nation, right? Standard Oil. Wealthiest man in the history of the world by far, way wealthier than Gates and in proportion to the society and to
percent of GDP
and percent of GDP. Just you can't fathom the amount of money. But his great grandchildren now are the one who are disowning him. Climate change activists. We are ashamed of our great grandfather's legacy. Whatever money's left, it's like, well, you're going to give it up.
Yeah,
you know, it's like you're so embarrassed by him. Like, give it up. Like, go get a job. Go flip burgers. It's like, well, no. Like, I want like what great grandpa left to be. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm ashamed of it, but I'm not gonna go be like you people. Well, it always makes me laugh.
And I'm not the biggest fan of Rockefeller, but the reality is he saved the whales, right? If we weren't using oil, people still would have been hunting whales, and they would have hunted them to extinction. It's true. He saved the man.
But he never gets any credit for it.
Never.
Nope. Yeah, the original Greenpeace activist saved the whales.
Exactly. But this is the thing. He saved it by producing something instead of shouting at people.
Yeah.
So then that can't be celebrated.
Now there's a thought. Make things.
Yeah.
Let's jump to this story from the Daily Mail. Quote, "Why did you ask such a dumb question?" Biden snaps at reporter who asks him why he's referred to as, quote, the big guy in FBI Ukraine file.
obviously because I'm taking the money, idiot.
His quickest verbal moment while in office.
Yeah, right.
It's the fastest he ever responded. Oh man, I've said this a million times before, but it was so pathetic the way the media was trying to position this man as a kind, caring adult, right? Oh, Trump's the nasty one and Biden's nice. No. Biden's nasty. He's just not funny like
His
Trump.
kids are all
Let me
super
read
messed
this,
up. How could he not be that?
Let me give you this important context. They say the nickname was revealed in an FBI memo that Republicans claim proves Biden was at the center of a $5 million cash for influence bribery scheme when he was vice president. If the memo shows that their informant called Biden the big guy, I mean, that's corroboration. I would
say so. Yeah, I don't know how you get around that.
And that will be the example I used before of media omission. I guess we could pull up the sites right now, but I guarantee you on WashingtonPost.com, there's not a mention to that. On NewYorkTimes.com, there's just no mention of this memo. There's no mention of the big guy. They'll just ignore the story.
No, they're just going back and stealth editing old articles about Biden, being like, Biden, who gets colloquially called the big guy by everybody.
Who's called the big guy by his son?
By his son. It's
he got
nothing
called hands
specific.
in high school, you know.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, so this is hilarious. I think the campaign was trying to get out in front of this because there was a little picture book published ostensibly for children about Joe Biden, and it mentioned his time in high school, and it says he was such a good football player and he'd always catch the ball, so they called him Hands. I'm like, that's not why they called him Hands. That's
not
I think you just know that they were waiting for
Yo.
someone who went to high school with him to be like, we called that guy Hands. He was weird. I was good at football, man.
Biden besmirched the good name of Corn Pop.
Yeah, Corn Pop was a good dude who ran a bunch of good boys.
That story about Corn Pop, when Joe Biden talks about how he's at the pool and the kids are rubbing his legs, Corn Pop was probably like, stop touching those kids, dude.
Yeah.
No, he wouldn't get off the diving board.
I don't buy it. I think he was targeting those kids, and Corn Pop.
Look at what he says
hairy
about
leg.
his first wife's death. He says that the truck driver was drunk. He wasn't remotely drunk. He just made up that story to make his wife more sympathetic. He was drinking his lunch that day. The truck driver's family sued him for like a cease and desist because they said, like, our dad was not a drunk. Our dad wasn't drunk. It was a terrible car accident. A lot of people think maybe Mrs. Biden was the drunk one, but I guess that would be a autopsy they never had. But he has no problem besmirching the good name of individuals if it helps his career. He's not a good person. He's never been a good person.
Never.
He's a terrible person.
If you're the kind of person who doesn't mind being on camera groping children, I really don't think he's worried about lying.
Like, what is no shit? Just sniffing children in public in front of everyone. Like, that's a disgusting, horrible thing to do. And then on top of that, to not have the self-awareness to know, like, hey, everyone's watching me while I'm doing this horrible, disgusting, freaky thing.
I feel like he doesn't care. He's like, I can get away with it.
My
It
legs are
doesn't matter.
hairy, man. I can do.
No, he's a very strange
Do you think he
person.
sniffs his legs ever because of the hair? He's got a thing for it.
I imagine that,
Sniffing
like,
hair and
when Corn Pop confronted Joe Biden and was like, you got to stop touching those kids, man. And then he grabbed the chain or whatever. He had a chain. Is that what he said?
No. So Bill Wright, Mouse, he was the only white guy in the air, and he did all the pools, and he brought me, showed me where all the mechanics, where all the pool filter is, and he cut me off a length of chain. There was a chain that went across the pool for the deep end, and he cut him off the chain, and he said, "You tell Corn Pop that if you may cut me, man, but I'm gonna wrap this chain around your head, and if you don't tell him that, then don't come back." And he was right.
So Joe Biden.
These are the words of our
Joe
president,
Biden's got
by
a
the
chain,
way.
and Corn Pop sees Joe Biden.
You memorized
screwing
that
with these
speech
kids.
very well.
Thank
And
you.
then
We
Corn Pop
animated it.
says,
Kennedy's.
Thank you. That's the most famous presidential speech to me. It's like the Gettysburg Address.
So Corn Pop is confronting Joe Biden, who's abusing kids.
Yeah.
And then down the line, people actually take this story seriously, that Corn Pop's the bad guy. Knowing the history of Joe Biden, I am convinced that Corn Pop was probably a local kid who saw Joe Biden groping kids and said, yo, we're going to put a stop to this, him and his buddies. And he's like, there's a couple of bad dude with his bad boys. And it's like probably some local kids who are like, yo, this lifeguard keeps groping kids.
Yeah. Make a cartoon about what really happened. What really happened.
was a good dude.
No,
Ran a bunch of good boys.
And
one day,
seriously though, make a cartoon of the true story of Corn Pop.
we did,
And then
we animated it.
But take the statement of him. Yeah, but Not Joe Biden's
Yeah, I
version
know.
of events.
It's not reliable.
The version where he's like, the kids are touching my legs and
What
whatever.
actually happened? Yeah.
And the guy's like, you better knock it off, Joe, you creepy hands. Hey, hands, stop groping those kids. They call me that because of football. What are you talking about?
catching footballs, man.
Hands, big guy Joe Biden.
I was dying because here's the thing: no one has alleged that he was called Hands before, and then they published this little picture book that says he was called Hands Biden in high school. I'm like, that is not why they called him Hands. It was not because he was good at catching footballs.
But this is ignoring.
because I made good food, man.
They're gonna write that as a child, Hunter. No, they're gonna say Bo Biden called him the big guy. Because then they're gonna make it like, don't insult his dead son.
You can't question Bo at all.
Bo, who died in Iraq.
That's right. Yeah.
Tragic.
Yeah, when people brought Hunter up to Joe, they were talking about his son. He's like, Bo was a great kid. Dude, if somebody started like bringing up bad things I had done to my father, like how do you speak? Like, how do you speak to the fact that your son does X, Y, and Z? And then he started like singing my brother's praises. I'd be like, oh, my dad must be really embarrassed of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think Joe Biden knows if he brings up Bo, he can deflect anything because people don't want to comment on that, right? They don't want to talk about a
Joe just
veteran
says-
guy. He says the craziest.
No,
and
he says
the fact-
anything.
Do you remember when his daughter's diaries got leaked? And she just obviously is a
creepy.
very troubled person, and you have to wonder at what point did she become very troubled? As she and her brother both abuse a lot of drugs, they have very serious issues, and they both grew up in the same household. So it's almost like there was a bad influence in and around the household they grew up in.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how we can think Joe Biden is a good guy and just got really unfortunate with these two super privileged children
but-
who both are just train wrecks.
But nobody does. Nobody thinks he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Democrats are lying about everything.
True. That's true.
You know, it's like you talk to people on the right and they'll make fun of Trump. They'll say stuff like, what's the joke where Seamus, I think you made it, that Trump is like he's like got street cred because he's got 3 baby mamas or whatever.
Oh yeah, we did a cartoon on that. He has 3 baby mamas and a criminal record. Like the girls love him now.
Like people on the right have no problem pointing out they know these things about Trump. There are negative things about Trump, but there are reasons they like it. People on the left will defend literally anything Biden does.
Well,
no, I'm sorry. I should clarify that. Many leftists won't, but they'll still vote for him. I get that.
That's
but
just
there
Joe.
But there are liberals who in the media, the corporate neo-libs are the ones I'm actually talking about, who no matter what he does, they will lie and defend him.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. People will talk about Donald Trump and they'll say, how could you Christians vote for this man who's behaved in such an unchristian way? Oh my goodness, I forgot all of these wonderful opportunities I have to vote for good Christians in politics who do good Christian things all the time. It's completely nonsense. Like, when was there ever this option of wonderful, virtuous people to pick from in American politics in my lifetime? There wasn't. You know what's great about Donald Trump? He doesn't hate me. He doesn't hate me like every other person I've had the opportunity to vote for does.
So you voted for people who hate you?
No, I didn't vote for those people because the first presidential election I was old enough to vote in was Trump versus Hillary.
Oh,
Yeah,
you voted
right.
Trump?
We don't have to talk about it. I voted Trump. I voted for Trump.
There's no way you voted Hillary.
Yeah, well, this was also back when I was still living in Cook County, right? So my vote wasn't going to do anything, but I still voted for him.
Yeah.
You weren't with her?
Believe it or not, I did think it was her turn.
That's
But I
true.
thought this is Cook County. My vote won't mean anything. So.
I really thought.
As a joke, you voted for Trump?
We joked
no,
in
I voted for him
16.
wholeheartedly.
I was still living in D.C. in 16, and we joked when the results came in, and Trump had like 4,500 and something votes, and we were like, "I bet you we know all of those people." Like, we could do like 6 degrees of separation. Like we could probably figure out who they are.
You're all at the same election night watch party, like, it's us, guys.
Well, so what do you think is going to happen? You think Trump gets the nomination, goes up against Biden, then wins, or what?
Oh, yeah. What do you? I'll let you make the prediction.
Yeah, well, I think Biden has I won't say if it's that cut and dry. I don't think it's going to be 2020 all over again because Biden has a record to run on. Ultimately, if you want to think I'm a conspiracy theorist lunatic, which I am, they have to find a COVID variant. by 2024.
But
they have to.
It can't be COVID. Bird flu.
Whatever it is, they have to go back to mail-in ballots. They have to go back to
bird flu.
They have to. They can't win any other way.
Or
you don't think it's going to be a monkeypox surge?
It could be wildfires.
It could be something. Some pandemic has to happen that they can control the balloting at the local level, because it's the only way he's going to win.
Something has to stop people from being able to have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are just too many. And people are like, what about the suburban housewife? The suburban housewife is tired of paying $4.75 for a dozen eggs. And she doesn't like Trump, but she's really, really broke.
No, look, all that matters is the Republicans, political action committees, you name it, whether it's Trump or not, they're going to run ads of the trans activists bouncing their topless breasts at the White House.
Yeah.
And they're going to run those in the suburbs nonstop.
They have to.
And then suburban moms are going to be like, oh, no.
Yep. And calling those parents domestic terrorists.
Yep.
You know, that's the type of stuff. So if you're going to go after our kids, then we're going to use our kids to go after you. That's the winner.
Let's talk about this story from the Post Millennial. Yingling sponsors PA Pride drag show for families.
Yuck.
Quote, need your drag fix before our iconic Music Fest drag show? Well, the Queens return to Music Fest Cafe Press by Yingling on June 30th. So here's what I want to clarify. They deleted this tweet. That's very interesting. The venue's title, the venue is called Music Fest Cafe presented by Yingling. That's the name of the venue. So if you were to host a birthday party there, you'd say, hey, show up to Music Fest Cafe presented by Yingling. That's where the party is. However, a lot of people are trying to use that as an absolute defense of Yingling. I don't think it's an absolute defense, but I think it is a decent one. They say the festival's Facebook page wrote on June 12th. This post was well on Twitter. They deleted it on Twitter. Timcast news team reached out. They confirmed it is an all ages drag show. You can bring your kids. And they confirmed that it is still going on, and they don't know why the post was removed. That being said, I'm going to say it. I'm not going to be like, oh, Yingling, you got to boycott them or whatever. I'm going to be like, you guys need a statement on this one. Yingling needs to say, if that is the case, be like, look, we sponsored a venue, and the venue does what they do. We didn't know they were doing this. We're not okay with that. And I think that's satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. But considering what's been going on, considering the Bud Light effect and the backlash, I think people are probably already boycotting Yingling over this.
I think it's possible that Yingling might even be too afraid to release a statement because they might be thinking not enough people know about this yet. And if we release a statement, more of them will, and it will upset them. And we don't want the Bud Light effect to occur here.
Well, at least about 45,000 right now know about it.
Yeah. I mean, look, if they released a statement saying, we are sorry we sponsor this, if they, and being honest, like if they genuinely didn't know what was happening, then please say that. I'll go out, I'll buy I can't say I'll become a customer for the first time because I already drink Yingling. But if they were intentionally sponsoring this and they're going to continue to sponsor this stuff, then no, I will not buy Yingling
anymore. If Yingling puts out a statement and says, not only did we not sponsor this event, but we are condemning it and we stand against it, I will go to the local liquor store and buy all of the Yingling they have right now.
Yingling, give me an excuse to buy more Yingling. That's what I'm asking you for.
But here's the crazy thing. The venue deleted the tweet. I wonder, so my understanding is that the former head of Yingling, very pro-Trump. And I think the family is conservative pro-Trump. I think maybe the tweet came down because they got wind of it, because people were tagging them in it, being like, what's this all about? They probably said, hey, take us off that. We didn't sponsor this event. And so the tweet got removed. Apparently, people are saying they edited the Facebook post to remove sponsored by Yingling or whatever. But the event's still happening, and the venue is still a Yingling-sponsored venue. So I still think it'd be appropriate for them to issue a statement. But the point I was going to make, it's been a very bad Pride month for the Pride people.
Very good Pride month for me.
Yeah, I mean, someone mentioned in Super Chats that Xbox did bring back their Pride logo. But either way, the fact that there's been pushback at all, the fact that the workers union at Starbucks says they were told to take down decorations, the fact that Target said hide it in the back, right? This stuff's being pushed back very, very heavily. Yeah, it's been a bad month.
I think it's pretty incredible, and I think it tells American consumers the power that they actually do have.
Yeah.
I think so often we hear like, it's happening anyways, or you don't want to like draw attention to yourself, or you just let them have the month or whatever. And this is the first time you're seeing the tides turn with substantial evidence that if you are irritated enough, you can in fact enact change.
Well, you know what I think these people didn't understand? conservatives have always been against this, but mostly didn't care. Moderate liberal types mostly just don't care. And they were like, yeah, live and let live. Then they started going after kids, bringing in these books that were gratuitous, targeting children, doing these weird things. And then they lost the moderates. The moderates now went to the conservatives and said, please help me get this smut out of my child's school. And now the conservatives are like, yeah, we're going to get rid of all of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now it's all getting pushed out.
Target still sells the Love Wins doormats and stuff like that. And you want to say, like, actually, that is a very long time ago. We are well past that being the issue, the core issue for this group. And I think that's the problem. I think now that they've moved on to pushing a genderless society full of people who are torturing themselves physically, people don't want to do that.
Which is so funny because the whole purpose of being gay is your gender. But then there are multiple genders. It's like, so then which one is it, right?
Like, are you bisexual if there's more than two
there's only
genders?
two?
Remember, Johns Hopkins for a second, but it took it back, said lesbians are non-man.
Yes. Oh, you're a non-man at the table.
The interesting thing about that, so
Non-man.
this was like this week, I hope probably everyone knows this, but Johns Hopkins had the definition for a second, and they say they disavow it now, but a lesbian is a non-man who loves other non-men.
Yes.
But Johns Hopkins was the first, the Johns Hopkins Medical
I'm
Center.
sorry. It said a non-man attracted to a non-man. And so my explanation was that means that magnets are lesbians.
That's true.
Oh, wow. That's
So
a good
remember,
point.
we're erasing
if they're both
women.
negative.
True.
Right. Well, no. Opposites attract. Negative and positive, north and south.
Oh, okay. You're
Yeah.
right.
So that means I got one for you. All matter, except for that which comprises a man, is a lesbian. You know why? Because
That's true.
Gravity.
Yeah.
Because mass attracts.
Yeah.
The other thing is that they
non-men.
left the term man in the definition of gay. So
Right,
it's
right.
just lesbian that gets to be not gendered. But I was going to point out that Johns Hopkins was the first medical center in the U.S. in 1966 to offer a change of sex surgery. Like, it is indicative of the direction they're drifting. The only reason that they stopped being at the forefront of gender ideology and gender medical intervention was because their chief of psychology, Paul McHugh, I think I'm getting his name right, was like, no, if people have a gender issue, we should help them, but we should only treat them for psychological issues. We should not offer them physiological medical intervention. And that stopped it for 30 years. He's the one who campaigned to make sure these surgeries weren't covered under Medicaid. And then eventually Johns Hopkins University was like, no, we really want to make the money. But that's my editorial there. But we are actually going to embrace this. And now they have one of the leading gender, I don't even know what to call it, gender centers in the US. Like, this was something that has been happening for a long time. And I think the fact that this school put out a definition, got hit with backlash, said, oh no, we didn't mean that. We're just trying to be respectful of all genders. Like, they are telling you the direction they're going in. They have been doing this for decades. And yet people say like, oh, well, they fixed it, so we'll just let it go. Yeah. They said they didn't mean to erase all the lesbians, so, it's fine.
Erase just women in general.
Just all women.
Yeah,
and this is something Phyllis
women.
Schlafly, I wrote about this during Women's History Month. Phyllis Schlafly was warning against this when everyone was campaigning for the Equal Rights Amendment. She said repeatedly that it wasn't about giving men and women equality, it's about erasing the differences between men and women.
Always.
I just want everyone to hear that over and over again. Like, it's not about helping women, it's about deleting the differences between genders, which is inherently destructive to society.
To the family, right? That's the whole point. They don't want men and women. They want men and women to not know how to relate to one another, so that we'll have weak families. Because if you have a weak family, you have a weak society, and then there's less of a competing authority structure for the state or whatever perverse ideological worldview they want to try to build out from the ashes.
I don't want to live in a genderless world, and I'm very comfortable with that. I feel like everyone should be against that.
I got good news for you. You never will. They'll try to push this stuff, but ultimately men are men and women are women, even if they don't live up to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, depending on what happens with the chemicals in our foods, birth control, and things like this seeping into our water, and maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's only the 15th, right? Is it June 15th?
June 15th today.
We still have half the month to go. Let's see what happens.
It's been a wild ride.
No group has done more harm to gay people than gay activists. And you can change that for lesbian, trans. I've been on the show a bunch. The audience knows I'm married to a dude. I don't really care about it. No one cares. But we're talking the other night, like we were out in the field doing something in the farm, and Andrew, my better half, who doesn't talk, he's pretty quiet, farmer, and he was like, remember 10 years ago when like no one cared? And he's like, isn't it miserable? He was like, I never,
Wow.
he's like, and we're in our, 40s. He's like, I've never been more embarrassed to be gay than I am right now.
Wow.
And we live on a farm in the middle of nowhere. He's like, it's just miserable. I'm like, no, I get you. He's like, it is miserable. He's like, it's just miserable. I mean, so no one has hurt gay people more than gay activists. And I wouldn't put the trans movement as the head of that. But like, honestly, 10 years ago, it was so much easier. Like people would be like, oh, it's Pride Month. And like, yeah, for a second, like, yeah, I don't care. Like, just leave me alone.
But I don't think it's gay activists. I think it's leftists.
Well, yeah, but leftists. But
Leftists in general.
Well,
these are white liberal women.
That's true. They've used us the way they've used BLM, the black people to push BLM, the way they've used Greta Thunberg to push green issues, right? It's just miserable. Like the best thing you could do to celebrate Pride Month is just shut up. Leave it alone. And I do agree with you. When they started bringing in the kids, it's when people like Andrew and I were like, we want nothing to do with this. Oh my God, this is so freaking weird and disgusting and perverted.
And now the argument is becoming, because we've talked about it. We've had people ask us, do you think gay marriage was the slippery slope to what they're doing now? And
Probably.
I'm like, but I disagree. I'm like, when we say like, look, like as you mentioned, you and your husband are off doing your own thing and you're on a farm in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't care about that. Like, you should have the rights and access. And I've had that position my whole life when it came to the gay marriage question. Just because something happens and then another thing happens doesn't mean that one is the fault of the other, right?
Well,
Because that argument is what they use to try and ban guns. They say, oh, when more people have guns, you see more gun death. And it's like, well, okay, sure, but that doesn't mean you don't have the rights. I'm not going to take away someone's right to keep and bear arms because some people do bad things. We ban those bad things, get rid of it, we protect the good things.
I don't know that it's gay marriage itself. I think it's the corporate, the money around lobbying for gay marriage. Like once that victory was achieved, we had to then take all of this momentum that we had and turn it into something else that we could sell and make money off of. And that benefited the medical industry that pushes trans ideology. It benefits corporations like Target that can sell you a rainbow t-shirt and say like, look, I support you and drag you back in. I don't know that it's like the legal issue, but I do think it's that all of the momentum that it had to go somewhere. And someone was like, I have decided I'm going to steer the ship in this crazy direction and they will follow.
I think if you're a communist, you're never satiated. And
Yes.
so they won, quote unquote, victory. I'm sure you think it was a victory. They won the victory of gay marriage. But like that wasn't it. It was like, what's next? And it's the same with like the green movement. They never are like, well, we got that, so now we're done. It's like, nope. The same with the guns, right? We got our loopholes. Not enough. What's the next one? What's the next? I think the left is never satiated with, they don't ever have one victory. One victory just leads to a greater one. And I agree with you. I think like marriage, like should people, whatever you can argue, we can all disagree. And that's wonderful. But no one was like, all right, we're all done. Everyone should close up shop.
But
Yeah.
look,
You know, we're done. It's like, no, we're not. Now we want the next thing.
I think guns is a good analog to this. I think we need more constitutional carry across the board. I think people that use guns to kill the innocent are evil and must be stopped. So my view is like individuals have their rights, but just because you have access to something doesn't mean it's your fault that another person did something bad. So if there are groomers
True.
and abusers trying to come into this space, I'm not going to blame two guys on a farm minding their own business.
Well,
Thank you.
so
It's not your fault.
what I would say is I agree. It's kind of ironic because Tim says he doesn't believe the slippery slope started with gay marriage, and you were arguing that it probably did. I would actually push it back before that. And so what I believe, and I believe we've talked about this when you were on the show before, but I'm Catholic. I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. I also believe that sex is supposed to be unitive and procreative. And when we as a society decided that we were going to accept the normalization of artificial contraceptive methods, we basically pushed this giant boulder down the hill that was going to entirely interrupt and subvert our understanding of human sexuality and what it is. And so a lot of people will say, well, this is the moment where we started rolling down the slippery slope, or this is where we should have stopped. But my point is, as soon as that happened, we had pushed the boulder and it wasn't going to stop until we tried to turn it around and reverse everything.
I don't know. I just think, as I stated, if there's some basic question of two people who want to mind their own business, I'm fine with it. If someone then tries to use that to then do something evil, we just say no. You know, we recognize the difference.
But
But then I guess you and I, we just fundamentally disagree over what's evil.
Well, and I certainly think too the when it came to the question of gay marriage, this is back. What was it? Proposition 8 in California. Was a big thing or whatever?
They voted against it. Judges.
There was that famous line from Jack Black where he was like pretending to be Jesus on stage, and he says, "Your nation was built on separation of church and state." And I was confused because I was like, "Isn't that an argument against gay marriage? Like, if marriage is a religious institution, then wouldn't you be in fact arguing for civil unions and not marriage by saying that?" I never understood. But my position was always equal rights or whatever. But I do certainly understand this does lead. I do believe gay marriage led to the question of polyamory and polygamy and things like that, because then you start asking more questions about what defines the limitations of whether or not someone has the right to tax benefits and access, and why would it be limited to only one other person?
The one I'm seeing a lot right now is just good friends who get married, and they're like, but I really they're my life partner. Like, I like them more than anyone else, and they've been in my life longer, so why would I get married to someone I'm dating versus just like my best friend forever? Well, and that is another question about unions, right?
Supposed to be what marriage was.
If we're in a post-marriage society, are we allowed to?
Weird.
Well, I'm seeing this more and more all the time.
The entire reason that we decided as a society collectively to keep track, at least at the government level, of who is getting married is because we wanted to know who was accountable for which children and also who were making children. That was the point of it, as something that was enshrined legislatively. And so once you move outside of that, and this is why I've mentioned, I think this starts with contraceptives, because then you no longer believe that marriage is about having children, about having a family. And so then it can basically become about anything after that point. You just totally broadened the definition. And I think it's impossible after that to come to a point and say like, well, this is where we're going to stop it. You've already opened that Pandora's box. Like, you no longer have that reason-based definition of what it's for, and you either have to turn around and do away with all of it, or you're just going to get more of it. And this is something that like straight people will get mad at me for too, because they'll say, well, you're criticizing contraceptives. And I think one argument that was made by a lot of gay rights activists during the 90s through 2010s, when this was much more hot button issue, was, well, conservatives actually are not living and walking the walk when it comes to this stuff, because they are using contraceptives and they are getting divorced. And that's actually true. That was one of the things that I believed opened the door for all of this.
Boy, Paul VI would be so happy right now.
Yeah,
well, I mean, he's listening. So
he's Saint Paul VI.
He's really very excited. Nice job.
No, it's true, and he said all
done.
that. Yeah, thank you.
He did.
He said basically all of it
60 years ago.
Yeah, it's very prophetic. Yeah.
I wonder, the main issue for me was always about equal rights and access, not the definition of a family. I actually thought that if marriage is done in churches and in temples and synagogues, and it's viewed widely as like a religious function in this country, then there's a separation of church and state. And for the government to mandate a church provide a ceremony or whatever would seemingly be a violation of that.
Yeah, well, this is Christianization. I was going to say this is what we talk about with the post-Christian nation. Obviously, the state realized the vital importance of marriage, that they adopted it, and it became a state thing. The question is, should it still be a state thing? And I would argue it should. There's a value to the family. There's a value to moms and dads and keeping track of children. And it used to be for the purity of the bloodline also, that we weren't making sure that you were marrying your first cousin or et cetera, et cetera. That was a very important role of it. But the state has adopted principles of religion because it was valuable for society. It's very much, even from the secular point of view, someone like Thomas Jefferson, one of our great Virginians, as a proud Virginian now, I'll say, wasn't himself particularly Christian, same with Ben Franklin, but realized the benefit in society. Yeah. So what happens when we become post-Christian is we throw away all of that and we think society is going to continue as it is, and it's not. It's the same as if we get rid of the same as we're trying to adopt a smartphone. Kids have been the same for 5,000, 10,000, 150,000 years, and now kids are totally different because of this little device, and we can't adopt fast enough. Yeah,
I mean, it kind of hacks your brain. But I just want to mention, because you brought up Paul VI, and you're right, but I just want to mention this. Usually when I'll make these arguments, I'll get hit with, you're arguing from a Catholic perspective or making a religious argument. True that I'm Catholic, but you'll notice I did not invoke divine revelation at all.
Yeah, that was Daniel.
Yeah, that was you.
That's his
but no. There's nothing wrong with that.
Daniel got through one show without Catholicism. Catholicism.
No. I just want to mention this. When I give that explanation, I'm speaking like from the perspective of what makes sense for a functioning society. I'm not. I at no point said, well, the reason we have to do it this way is because, you know, when two baptized Christians get married and have a sacramental marriage and they're trying to get each other to heaven, I believe all of that's true. But my argument from this is from a perspective of, well, why is the government looking at this in the first place?
Yeah.
And there are plenty of non-religious reasons for that.
And we are not a healthy society. And I love that you said that. I'm looking at this for what is a healthy society. And what I find one of the more fascinating things to do is go back and look at surveys that have been done for 20, 40, 50, 100 years of happiness, of depression levels. And every single survey shows that we are a less happy, we are a more depressed, we are not a healthy society right now.
Do you agree with
way?
Do you agree with Seamus's interpretation of the purpose of family and
Absolutely.
requirement? But how do you reconcile that?
You know, that's for God is going to ask me that question one day because it doesn't make any sense. I'm a total contradiction, but I agree with him 100%. I grew up Catholic. You know, I realize what I am living right now is not in accordance with my faith, but I also understand that, you know, for God, how many years, 20, 30 years, I tried to pretend I wasn't. And I'm like, well, that's it. You know what actually made me, a couple things made me come out, and I was in my late 20s when it happened, was one thing that made me come out was how much I didn't like gay people because of their vulgarity, their promiscuity, pride parades. And I thought,
Wow.
I don't want to be anything like that, so I can be better. So why, you know, like why are we allowing gay people to have this awful reputation? Because they've brought it upon themselves, quite frankly. That was one of the things that made me come out. Another thing that made me come out were a lot of the church scandals. You know, I grew up very devoutly Catholic, and I would see the number of things happen, and everyone would sort of absolve themselves and say, well, you know, that's unfortunate, but we've moved on. And I thought, well, wait a second, like that bishop is still going to be the bishop, and he knows all these things happen in his diocese, but I can't marry Andrew because that's wrong. I'm like, well, wait a second, Holy Mother Church, like, how come that bishop can keep his diocese when all this is happening? But I can't marry this. So, and that's a knock on the church. I admit it, and God will judge me for it. I hope he's lenient. I pray to him every day that he will be, but there are a couple of things that made me come out. But that doesn't mean when it comes to society and the role of the family, I will change my beliefs on that.
That's an interesting point about the scandals in the church and the inaction they've taken, because perhaps the corruption starts in the church and their inaction on these scandals.
Yeah, so there's definitely some truth in that. I would say that, you know, God is going to judge all of us at the end of our lives, but of the things you've discussed, I don't think the thing he's going to judge you for is pointing out that there are bad people in the church who did unbelievably horrible things. And I've spoken on this in the past. I think that anyone who is involved with the abuse of children or covering up the abuse of children not only has to be removed from their position in the church, but they need to be prosecuted to the fullest possible extent of the law. I think it's an absolute travesty what occurred. It's unbelievably horrific. But that said, that is an example of there being really horrible people in the church doing really horrible things, but that doesn't justify rejecting church teachings in other ways.
I love how many leftists will often bring up the abuse at churches as some kind of gotcha to people who are concerned about what's happening in schools, because it's like, let me ask you, do you think that the parents in these districts, in these dioceses or whatever, do you think that they're like totally fine with what's going on when they find out about it? Do you think that they're just like, no one tell anybody what just happened? Or do you think there's like fury, rage, and demands?
Well, I'll put it this way. There are many dioceses that have rules that say, like, no, you know, if you're a cleric or you work from the church, you cannot be alone with a child. And I have not known a single priest who said, this is unfair. You can't do this. Of course we should be allowed to be alone with children. And yet when Ron DeSantis in Florida signs legislation which says you can't have secret conversations with children about sex that you then tell them to withhold from their parents, the entire community in this country erupts with cries
Just
of
let the
homophobia.
teachers teach.
And it's don't say gay, right?
Let's jump to this story from Daily Mail. Gavin Newsom weighs possible criminal prosecution of Ron DeSantis for disgraceful migrant flights to Democrat-run sanctuary cities. I find this story hilarious. Gavin Newsom, you know what happened? He saw Joe Biden imprison his political opponent, and Newsom was like, well, I want to do that. So with Newsom entertaining the possibility of a run for the presidency, and that I think he's even talked about debating DeSantis, it looks like they're the B team. And he's like, now's my opportunity. I'll do what Joe Biden did and get a bunch of press. I think we're at the point now where Democrats criminally charging their political opponents is favorable for them among their voter base, and they'll do it.
Yeah, it shows tough. It shows that they're strong. It shows that they're unafraid. I think Gavin is just desperate for media attention, and like Joe Biden, he can't run on his record. He has to run on something else. Look at the state. California is the greatest state in the nation, and as a New Yorker, it's hard to say that in terms of beauty and topography and resources and. Every song was about California.
Yeah.
The OC was about California, and it's an absolute disaster right now. So he's got to pivot from the fact that he's ruined the greatest state in the country.
I got to read this. It says Gavin Newsom is working with a Texas sheriff to gather enough evidence to potentially bring charges against Ron DeSantis for flying migrants from the border to Democratic enclaves. Where are the Republicans? Where are the conservatives to do the exact same thing? Well, it's laughably sad.
They're scared, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned this. This looks good for Democrats. You mentioned they want to run on something else. You said it makes them look like they're tough. And that's very much the case. The only crime they're tough on is thought crime. You disagreed with our position. Now we have to cast you out. We're gonna make an example of you.
The Republicans are like, how dare you? We're going to write a strongly worded letter.
Yeah.
And then that's it. That's the last you hear about it.
And you know, California is such a sad story because you're right. It's gorgeous. California, it's like the most gorgeous woman you've ever met who's just completely out of her mind, right? It's just, you can understand that when something or someone is that beautiful, maybe they can let themselves slip in terms of personality because people are more willing to tolerate them because of how beautiful they are. I think that's true of California. It's such a gorgeous place that they were able to get away with treating people there so poorly for so long, but eventually everyone's going to leave you.
Well, and Newsom made some big promises, right? Didn't he say he was going to like end all homelessness by what, 2030 or something? Like we are coming up on his.
He's got a couple years, all right? He could do
He's
it.
going to put them all on a bus.
Yeah, he's going to ship all.
Send him to Martha's Vineyard.
I think it's hysterical though that these Democrats who said like we're a sanctuary state, all are welcome. It's like, okay, we'll send them there. And it's like, whoa. We didn't really mean that all are welcome. Yeah. So it's like, are you a sanctuary state? Do you embrace it or not?
Yeah.
I think it's great. And I think that the states like Florida, governors like DeSantis saying, you want to be the sanctuary state? Then I will give you all of ours because we don't want it in our state. I wish more would do that, quite frankly. I mean, if you're going to be a sanctuary state, then embrace it completely.
Well, don't they want the poor and tired huddled masses?
Exactly. Right? Our foreign policy is based on a lousy poem to raise money for the base of the Statue of Liberty.
It's so ridiculous. And part of what I love about the fact that these migrants were sent to Martha's Vineyard and are sent to these blue states and cities is they end up making all of our arguments for us. Well, we just don't have the resources. Yeah. You can't shuffle people around like this. Yeah. You can't put people wherever you want. It's cruel to do this to them. Oh, interesting. Is it?
After DeSantis did the Martha's Vineyard thing, someone was going to bring human trafficking charges against him, right? I saw like three. Was it Newsom? I thought it was the governor of Massachusetts, but I could be wrong.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
But either way, I don't think he got charged with human trafficking, so I don't really know what Gavin Newsom's coming up with. I mean, I hope he runs for president. I feel like just let him die a political death. That would be super nice because there has to be an end to this idea that Gavin Newsom has a future. He has destroyed California. I don't know who likes him. I don't think California wants to keep him. So what is the game plan? And the only way for him to finally leave is to run for the presidency. I'm convinced.
Well, yeah, he's seen himself as president. He has very dead behind the eyes look. Like when you see him give an interview, Gavin Newsom does not look like without being too cruel. He gives off a vibe of true detachment,
like a lizard.
It's just
like a lizard.
He does not make you feel comfortable or calm. Like he looking at Gavin Newsom is very nerve-wracking.
Have you seen the picture of the lizard with the skin, the Gavin Newsom skin? Tape, clothespins to the back.
I have not, but that's probably fairly accurate.
Yeah, funny meme.
Yeah,
I think this guy's evil. I think there's a lot of Democrat governors that are just pure evil. The killing of the elderly in these nursing homes with COVID and stuff like that. Newsom was issuing these mandates, but then he got caught not wearing a mask. They do not practice what they preach, and there are people who just want to be sheep.
Yeah, and for good or for ill, one of the roles that the state does have is the dejected, cast aside, mentally ill who are screaming on the street. But now we call it dignity by allowing them to stay on the street and scream.
Yeah.
And when you look at cities like San Francisco or my home city of New York, where there are literally thousands of people who are completely, and not just because they're on drugs, but they are truly mentally psychotic, who are screaming, who are in terror, where's the dignity in that? Where's the dignity of allowing this poor guy who sees demons, who is probably truly schizophrenic, and we leave him there to defecate on himself, to have people throw things at him? That there's no dignity in that, and that's what these governors do, or these mayors do on the daily basis, and they call it, they try to take praise for doing something for the humanity. It's as vile gets. And so I agree with you when you say he's evil, because what they're doing is genuinely evil.
No, it's a very good point. When you see the medieval era caricatured, there's often the mad person in the town who just kind of runs around, and as you described, they're just defecating and urinating and screaming obscenities and nonsense. And again, that's something you see in a caricature of medieval life, and it's also something you see in California today. They do absolutely nothing for people who are genuinely mentally ill because they won't involuntarily commit them. Mm-hmm. And you know why? It's because they don't see human beings as human beings. They don't see those people as other persons who need help. They see them as something useful for advancing their political cause, and they're less useful to them when they're getting help. They're more useful to them when they're out on the street screaming at strangers, making them feel horrified, frightening children.
Do you think that there's any way for these cities to win back trust in the American people? I mean, you can't really take back the images of what these cities have gone through, or like you guys know about this huge homeless encampment that Phoenix is trying to clear out. I mean, how do you present these cities to the American public and say, you should trust us with your hometown?
I don't know where the breaking point is, right? I look at my home city of New York and all my siblings and their spouses who are all taking the subway, and they're all a little bit petrified, but you have to go to work. And then the Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny event happened. I thought that would have been a breaking point, that enough New Yorkers would have said, you know what, finally someone came to our rescue. Finally, this guy is on the subway screaming, I'm going to kill everyone on this car. And some 24-year-old was like, I got you back, guys. I'll take care of you. And
now there's another story.
And they're trying to put him in jail for 15 years. And so I don't know how much, I guess the question is, which I hate to say, how much worse does things have to get before we hit rock bottom? I thought we hit rock bottom 4 years ago, and we haven't hit it yet.
No. I mean, in all seriousness, I do think we're winning. You know, if you look at the Bud Light effect, no question.
Yeah.
The fact that Joe Biden, the administration, had to condemn those trans activists says a lot.
Yeah.
They know that it's bad for them in the long run.
That's good.
But there's another story in New York that I just retweeted it. It's a guy on the train was threatening people, and reportedly, according to a witness, punched this guy's girlfriend. So this is like well beyond just threatening everybody. And the guy, in self-defense, stabbed him, and they arrested him. The media just says arrested in the killing of a homeless man in a subway.
Well, Tim, no one should have to fear for their life every time they go punch an innocent woman in the face.
Yeah, I had this very spicy tweet that was about a woman who a guy tried to rape her on the train, and I was like, thank God no one tried to save her, because the rapist could have died.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. I'm seeing these leftists who are cheering on Daniel Penny being indicted, and I'm like, have you looked at the news about how many people were pushed in front of trains, how many women were attacked?
Yeah.
We need people to be willing to defend each other.
And Jordan Neely specifically had a record of attacking people in and around the subway. Like, this person in particular, it wasn't like this was a one-time tragic mental break that he was suffering and, you know, whatever. Like, this person had a specific violent criminal history tied to the subway.
Yeah.
This was a terrible situation, but not unprecedented.
In those 40 different times that he was arrested, none of them made headlines, right? When he tried kidnapping a child, didn't make a headline.
A 68-year-old woman's face.
Didn't make headlines.
Yeah.
Nope.
And then the media, Ian pointed this out, it was great. The report of Penny's indictment shows him in cuffs being led by cops, and then it shows Neely with this glamorous shot of him as Michael Jackson with the city lights. Incredible.
Al Sharpton doing his eulogy because there's a couple of bucks to be made. Yeah, just infuriating. And what annoys me about that when it comes to urban policy, crime policy, is like your prosecutors like Alvin Bragg will say, like there are 5,000 crimes committed, there must be 5,000 criminals, so we can't lock them all up. And it's like, well, no, there aren't. There's one Jordan Neely who committed 40 of those, and there's another who committed 50. The percentage of criminals is very small, and if you just got that percentage of criminals and put them in jail, the crime would disappear. It's not like there are new criminals. It's just that the same criminals committing the same crimes over and over again that aren't getting stopped. It's not rocket science to do this.
Well, no, that's absolutely true. And also there are crimes that we don't prosecute anymore. We had a guest talking on this about the show last week, but when you look at theft, I mean, I know that in California, they're saying if you steal less than $900, they won't prosecute. They're also less likely to go after these charges in blue counties and states. But as you mentioned, it's a small minority of people who commit many different crimes. Remember, they got Al Capone on tax evasion, right?
Yeah.
If you cannot go after people for any crime, and I mean actual crimes that they commit, I'm not talking about trumped up charges, I mean actual crimes. If you can't go after people for crimes like theft, then there are serial criminals who are committing many violent acts, including theft, but they're only ever caught for theft, and you have two options. Either you lock that person up and now they're in jail for theft and they're not committing other crimes, or you let them back out on the street to commit whatever other crime they want.
Yeah, and that's where you wonder if the crime, if you're the leftist prosecutor now, if the crime that they're more excited about is the thought crime, and that is the ones that they are going after. Those are the ones, whether it's on social media platforms, whether it's any threat to democracy. Those are the crimes they're interested in, and those are the crimes they will go after hard. But the little petty crimes, and it shows the disconnect between the powerful and the regulars. Alvin Bragg is not taking the subway. He may do a photo op, but he's not worried about his daughter getting on the subway, because if he has a daughter, she's probably got someone driving her to school. So the more that comfortable we are with other people dealing with the consequences is a huge problem.
Well, and there's a kind of ideological brain poisoning which occurs where a person begins to think that their political opponents are the root of all evil, and that the structure that they're trying to tear down is the only reason people do bad things. Yeah. So it ends up being the case in their mind that the people who commit the thought crimes are actually responsible for all of the violent crime that happens, because their thought crimes pull away from the ideologically pure regime which could come to be and solve the problems of crime and violence and hunger if only these troglodytes would get out of the way and let it.
So just so you know, that sound was me spinning the UFO, which is now spinning at a very high rate of speed.
Very nice.
Yeah, this is you take the little blower here, and then you point it at it, and then
and that is for the purpose of.
Yeah, look how cool that is. It's spinning.
It is. It's
for
spinning,
fun.
floating in
Very cool. What's up with that?
It's spinning very cool.
We're going to go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button? Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us. Become a member. We're going to have a members-only uncensored show coming up at about 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, we do these members-only uncensored shows, and we even have you, our members, call in and talk to us. Also, go to timcast.com. Click Mobile App, and you can download the Timcast official mobile app for all your viewing pleasure for Android. The installation package is there. It will hopefully be up in the Play Store on Apple and Android at some point, but we're waiting for approval. It's dragging out. The app's been done for a while, so we said, whatever, we'll just put it up. All right. I'm not your buddy guy, says Tucker's latest episode is spicy. Anyways, I hope those in Intel realize even if you stop some bad guys, becoming no different than the NKVD isn't worth it. What is NKVD?
North
Korean
video
department?
Yes.
Isn't it the Russian? I think it's the Russian secret police during Soviet times.
Ready to Rumble says it's pronounced youngling, as in a small person child. I have never heard anyone call it youngling.
That is brand new information.
And every bar I've ever gone to, they say we've got here. You ask them what they have, and they'll be like, "We've got Coors, we've got Bud, we've got Heineken, we've got Yingling, we've got." And so that's why I say it.
Maybe in like real German.
Maybe
like
traditionally. But here in America, it's like Celtic versus Celtics, right?
Yeah.
We have our own ways to pronounce words.
And we're Americans, damn it. We can pronounce it how we want.
If you're in our country, we're using whatever vowels we see.
Official citizen journalism from Jay says, the manager at my Starbucks told me that she was instructed to keep holiday decorations in moderation. I wonder if they're using semantics in regard to the pride decorations.
Oh, so they can say, we didn't say take down the pride decorations. We just said holiday.
Raymond G.
Holiday.
Stanley Jr. says, Tim, folks should lighten up on Biden. He has a speech impediment. Oh, yes.
I did. And so if we
has
did a cartoon
dementia.
about this today where we repeatedly brought that up. That was like
Total gaslighting.
Yeah. It's just a speech. You know, he has that speech impediment that makes you say poor kids are just as talented as white kids.
Yeah.
You know that one. That speech
Yeah.
impediment.
Also, participation trophies ruined the West. We saw it coming. Now it's a thing to cry discrimination because fat people can't fit. Yep.
That's true.
I think airplanes are where leftist ideology and physical reality clash.
Yeah.
One of the places.
Because you have people who are like, I should be allowed to fly even if I am morbidly obese. And it's like, I'm sorry, the plane can't lift you. I mean that. I'm not trying to be funny. If certain planes have weight restrictions, and so if they have, let's say, 300 seats on a plane, and they put people who are twice the average weight, the plane would be bogged down. The fuel cost would be exorbitant. It's just not physically possible. So they're saying we should get. Here's my solution to the problem. I can solve it right now. These overweight people are arguing that it's discrimination to charge them more for the same experience as another person based on their weight. And I say, oh, okay, here's what we'll do. Instead of selling seats, we'll sell seats in packages. All seats will be in a package of 3 all the time. Now, if you're a single individual who wants to fly on an American Airlines flight from, say, New York to Los Angeles, and you only need 1 seat, what do? No worries. On the website, there will be a pod selection thing where you can select a seat and then ask someone else to pitch in to buy the package together. That's simple.
I have another idea. All right, so I think airlines should charge by the pound, right? Because here's what I think. If someone weighs 300 pounds, but they have no carry-on,
Yes.
right? And I weigh 170 and I have a 40-pound carry-on, but it's only supposed to be 30 pounds, I get charged an extra $50, even though I'm actually bringing less weight on the plane than this person, and I'm taking up less space overall. So economically, it actually doesn't make sense to just charge 1 seat per person, especially when there are people who are so large, they take up 2 seats.
I like the idea. I don't have a lot of luggage
I'll
when I
stand
fly.
on a scale, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Put
not
me on that.
embarrassed.
Weigh me with my luggage. Charge me based on that.
What you said was fascinating, though, is how that they're now talking about the experience. When you buy a plane ticket, you're not buying an experience. This isn't Disneyland, right? You are buying a service. And so Wittgenstein would love to be alive right now. The way we use language to manipulate language for truth. You are not buying an experience, fatty. You're buying a service.
This is getting so fat phobic. Do you guys remember when Sydney Watson tweeted about the fact that she was trapped in between 2 rotund individuals on a flight, and there were articles written about this and how horrible it was. Now look, like again, I feel bad for people who struggle with the weight. I really do. There are people who are big, they're trying to lose it. I think that's got to be horrible.
Sure.
If you're in that situation, that really sucks. I wish you the best. I wish you the best in your effort to lose weight. I really do. But also, it sucks to be the skinny person who's wedged in between 2 large people. And it does happen. And it's not fair to put people in that situation.
The woman said it's not a choice. She said being overweight is not a choice.
That's
You're wrong.
just not true.
No.
At some point, you kind of break your body. At some point, you actually can become so large that you break your body, and it becomes much more difficult to lose the weight. But I think a lot of people just don't try, and then they say, "Oh, it's impossible."
I think a lot of people don't know, to be completely honest.
Being 6'3" in economy is not a choice. Right. And when the person in front of you reclines and it's like, well, this is what about my experience? Right. I mean, I can't lose any height. I can lose height harder than it is for you to lose.
You also can't buy extra leg room. They could buy an extra seat.
That's so true.
That's a great point.
That's so true.
I do buy extra leg room exactly for that reason, because I'm 6'3". So you buy extra side room.
Have you seen the new proposed staggered seating for air travel?
It was horrifying.
Instead of just 2 seats front and back, they stack one up a foot so it's slightly above. So
the lower one looks. Oh, I would go claustrophobic.
What?
So I couldn't do that.
Yes.
I
So
can't picture this. Explain to me.
So okay, you have 2 seats like this, right?
Okay.
One's here and one's here. When they recline, it's like that. Now what they're doing is they're lifting it up and moving it back. So your legs go underneath their seat. So, and then you have a TV or whatever it is in front of you.
So you can fit a lot more if you stagger them.
So you're lifting it up and moving it back. So now you've got one down, then you've got one up. And so there was this hilarious article, and it said there is a physical barrier between seats that if a person passes gas, the other passenger won't notice.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awful. And now I feel like livestock. If you had to go on a long flight like that, that's awful. That would be horrible.
Wasn't it
Horrible.
the CEO of Ryanair
Is she-
at one point? He was proposing taking out seats and having
Yes.
like a standing room only thing. He's like, you could get cheaper flights, and like in Europe, that almost makes sense, right? If your flight is 20 minutes, okay, maybe, but then like this situation for a long flight, like
Oh my gosh.
He said the flight London to Paris, which he said we do like 15 a day, would be standing room in the back, and it would be $20. And he's like, you know how many people for $20 would get on a standing room flight? And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
for an
just
hour
packed in.
flight, I probably would. Yeah, like being on the subway.
Yeah, holding on to the thing.
Like being
oh
on the
my
subway.
gosh.
yeah.
All right.
And then if someone starts threatening and screaming at people, you can't do anything because you're 30
OMG Puppy says, Ingold says BLM protests scared people into staying home, and that's why it slowed COVID.
because they were burning down buildings.
What study are you citing? Tell me it's University of Colorado, or I don't believe you.
No, it is. He's referencing.
No, I'm saying
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
But people were out by the thousands.
Yeah.
You know. Russian colluder says, Tim, Music Fest removed, presented by Yingling from Facebook post. Also, fact checking me in that segment at 12. How dare you? Greta Thunberg voice. I graduated top of my class at the Seamus Coughlin School of Journalism.
Thank you. I'm so glad. I remember. Yes, of course, I accredited him.
I like how Seamus had this like epiphany. He's like, if journalists are just reading things and then saying them again, and that makes them journalists, then I'm a journalist.
So I put it in my Twitter bio. I've been telling people I'm a journalist. When I went on OAN, I was introduced that way. Look, I'm a journalist. That's just how it is. If you don't like it, then you have a problem with the current paradigm, not me.
It's like someone who calls himself an
Anna Claire's
artist.
offended.
Exactly.
No, I'm just sad.
Oh, I should call myself an artist
What's
too.
your
I'm an
media?
artist.
You
I'm a
actually
journalist.
are more
I'm
an
a
artist.
beautiful
Like,
person.
this is
I
my
should have
thing.
a MacBook.
Why are you giving
happening here?
up?
Oh my
Why are you giving up such an interesting job title? I'm a cartoonist. I'm an artist. I own this business. To be a journalist when there's like 800 of them. There are so
Because
many
journalists are holy.
You could literally throw
They're special.
any random iPhone down the street in DC and hit 100 journalists.
And that would be a hate crime, and I would tell you not to do that, and then you'd end up on
But
Gawker.
how many cartoonists are there? Like, it's so much more interesting that you can be like, I'm Seamus Coughlin. I make my living making cartoons. Like, that's amazing.
Here's the thing. I think you're not seeing this because you're not a sophisticated journalist like me.
That's true.
There is no position in society higher to occupy than someone who reads things other people wrote and then restates them in a morally indignant way while calling people racist.
Well, I do that without calling people racist.
Without
though.
calling people racist.
Yeah, I call them commies.
But you've actually done journalism in the field. Like, you've gone to other countries and followed stories. You've been in war zones.
To be fair, if you are somebody who reads what other people writes and then have to correct them on their errors,
Yeah, that's
that
also
is
fair.
the modern journalist, and that's what they claim they're doing, but they're actually lying.
Fact checkers.
So the real
I'm a fact checker too.
But to be fair, the real issue isn't are you someone who reads things and then resays them. It's in what way. If for us here at Timcast, for instance, particularly me, where we do this show, we have conversations about stuff, we will read an article and then we'll break it down, add context to it, and opine on it like any other opinion show. So I don't say that this here I'm doing journalism. I do sometimes. I do make phone calls. I do get comments and everything. But and I say it's punditry, it's commentary, it's a talk show. What these quote unquote journalists are doing is they're reading things and then figuring out how to omit, rearrange, and shift words to trick people into believing the wrong thing while legally getting away with it.
They're editors.
Like when they said the right-wing rage, Target had to evacuate a bunch of stores over bomb threats to imply that right-wingers were sending bomb threats when it was in fact a LGBT ally saying it. That's what the journalists do. So when you say you're a journalist, Seamus, it's actually, oof.
Now, listen, I don't care what you guys say. I'm a journalist. That makes me cool. I'm turning it around. I'm buying low and I'm selling high. I'm going to make journalism cool again.
You are?
And then it's going to be
You
worth something.
specifically are
Yes,
making journalism cool
What's wrong
again?
with that, Hannah?
No.
Claire?
Whoa. That was a hate crime.
I said Hannah and then I said Claire after.
We got a good one here. Papa Romano says, Daniel Turner had one of the best lines in IRL history.
Oh boy.
The Biden family is like the Kennedys without the money or the class.
That was a long time ago. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
Without the money or the class.
No, it's so true.
Marion Holtzman says, the mainstream media is dead. Finally. Thank you, President Trump, for showing the normies. America is awake. Thank goodness. Yeah, I think a lot of people, because there was a period where like I have some friends, you know, back home in Chicago or whatever, and they have friends who are like liberal and would complain and say stuff. And I'd be talking to them and be like, yeah, but you know, when I tell that to so-and-so, they say this, that, or otherwise. Now I go to them and I'm like, ooh, I got one for you. Tell them this. And they, oh no, actually they're based. And I'm like, wait, well, like, yeah, now they're on board. Like they're at this point I say to them, they go, well, wow. They no longer disagree. They're just like done with it. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, well, now I'm not having fun. You know what I mean? Like the fun was to be like, "Ooh, I got something to prove it. Here, let's do it." But now we've won that ground, and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll get back to work, I guess." You know,
It's tough.
but
life.
you take your victories where you can get them. You know what I mean?
It's a tough life being right.
Anthony Brownlee says, has anyone seen the video just put out by a Russian hacker group saying Europe has 48 hours to prepare because they're going to destroy the economy?
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
That's rude of them.
How many hours ago did they put it out?
Yeah, it was like a day ago or something.
Was it a Russian social media site? Who was the guy who was on the?
Yeah.
It was like Russian hackers. They're hacktivists, basically. And
Yeah.
they're claiming they were going to do it in 48 hours, but it's been more than 48 hours. So, like,
Well, he
kinda
didn't
ran
say
out of
which
time.
48 hours. He didn't say when
That's
it was
true.
starting.
good point.
Yeah, they didn't say, is it business hours?
Yeah.
Because then it ends at 5.
They've got a couple days.
That's right.
Good point.
48 business hours. The Topping Show says, hi, Tim, fellow refugee from Illinois. Any advice for overcoming censorship? I started a daily show 89 days ago, and I'm getting less and less views. It's mostly business, but I touched on trans issues. The challenge is, if you believe that the reason you're not getting traffic is due to persecution, you may be falling into the same trap as the left. It could just be that it's not content people want to watch. Or it could be that they're trying to censor you before you get off the ground. It's really hard to figure out which one it is. Honestly, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like everyone, I don't do YouTube other than when I'm on here, I guess, but the people who are able to make these algorithms work say it takes a lot of time. You have to be really consistent. You have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So while shadow banning is a real thing, it may not be the exact reason. You just may not have found your niche yet.
It takes a long time, right? I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I started Freedom Tunes when I was 19. That's like when I started doing this, and it took 5 or 6 years before I was ever able to make a living off of it. I mean, you really have to work at this stuff for a long time to get it to work. And if you're gonna say, well, they're shadow banning me, it's possible, but is believing that going to add to your life in any way? No, like work harder, make something better, make something more engaging, and people are going to be more likely to watch it, even if they are trying to shadow ban you.
This is actually a good idea from Eric Miller. He says, Seamus cartoon idea. Wokey the Clown gets fired from his job at Bud Light. No other company will hire him, so he takes a shot at Hollywood, only to become homeless in San Francisco.
Oh my goodness. That would just make me sad, because that's...
Yeah, it's just a depressing story.
Yeah,
You could it would be really cool if you did the whole thing with like sad piano montage music, and it's like a kid growing up to get his dream in show business to be a clown, and he gets hired, and Bud Light shakes his hand, and then it shows him like Pride Month for the years that go by, and then one day, the executive slams a newspaper on the table showing Dylan Mulvaney, and the clown's like shaking, and then it shows him walking out, holding like a sign.
Now he's a sad clown.
I'm just
Yeah,
hearing
now he's a sad clown.
the music
Box
from
of things
I'm just hearing the
from the
music from
desk.
Toy Story when they play the like montage of like Jessie, like the girl being really into playing with the Jessie
When
doll,
somebody
and then over
loved
time,
me.
yeah,
That's right. That's right.
that's all I'm
That's
hearing as I'm
wokeism.
describing.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
When somebody
loved
Wokey at the Pride parade, and then it's over.
Beautiful. Sarah McLachlan, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Yeah. And then it just ends with him in San Francisco as a homeless person.
Trapped under a bed like the doll.
And then Gavin Newsom walks up and he's like, I'm here to help. And then a bunch of guys guys in uniforms, like law enforcement with buses, start rounding up the homeless people, and that's the end of it.
Setting them somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right.
What a terrible cartoon that would be.
You guys just made this really sad. It's like trying to make these
sorry,
happy,
you don't
funny
even
cartoons.
care about cartoons. You're a
just 'cause
journalist now.
I didn't say I don't care about cartoons. I just said that journalist is a more prestigious title. That's
so
all.
depressing.
I don't know.
All right. Sherman Panzer says, last show you talked about cowardice and bravery, and history shows many examples of it, like that of the Polish people in World War II. When faced against an unwinnable fight against two super armies, they chose to fight despite the odds. Real bravery. Yep. You know what I learned? I learned something interesting. I was reading about this. When I was growing up, there were a lot of Polish jokes. You ever hear a Polish joke?
About 500,000 of them, yes.
Right. And I wondered why that was. I'm like, where does it? Because like I know Polish people, and like
Have you met Luke? I know why there are Polish jokes.
Sure. But like in all seriousness, though, Luke is like is extremely successful. He's got like a big YouTube channel, and he's like
Some people get lucky.
successful. Well, but no. But in all seriousness, wondering why it was these jokes came to be, and it's actually rather horrifying. When the Nazis and the Soviets were fighting over Poland, the authoritarian dictators executed their intellectuals and their academic class and their heads of state and industry to take control of everything, leaving only farm workers. And that's where they start creating this trope that Polish people were stupid because they were brutally murdered by communists and Nazis.
No,
I'm like, wow, that's actually really horrifying. And that's why, in my experience, most Polish people I met have been successful and intelligent because they're the ones that were able to escape, succeed, and flee before the dictators came and tried destroying their country.
And even though people like Luke give them a bad name, I actually think the Poles are.
All right,
I think they're unbelievably based. No. I'm just saying.
it.
I just want to make clear. I think they're unbelievably based. I am a friend of the Polish people. I think they're wonderful. Every Polish priest I met has been extremely based. Like they're one of the countries in Europe that really has it together still.
That's a brutal history of jokes, though. It's like, man, that's not
not funny.
That's not funny
Make
at
a
all.
cartoon about that.
Yeah,
after your tragic clown, make another sad cartoon. You need to start a new series of miserably suicidal cartoons.
I'm just gonna call it the 20th century and just do every horrible thing that happened in the 20th century as a cartoon.
Buds Not Bomb says, Burisma whistleblower dead. I do not believe that's true. Take that with a grain of salt. I've not seen any strong confirmation. I've only heard rumors. And so that's why we haven't really, I haven't gone anywhere near the story. I don't know if you've heard anything, Anna Claire.
Everything I've seen is just, there's no way to confirm it.
Yeah, it's just like someone said something somewhere.
I've heard through someone that maybe it seems like this.
And it's the Bidens, not the Clintons. So odds are he's alive.
I thought it was the FBI.
They look, they're not going to take him out, but they will sniff his hair. They're going to surround him.
You got to make that video.
Come on, man.
The Bidens.
We have in Biden's paradise, he threatens people. Me and my homies going to be sniffing your hair. And then
you make a video where the whistleblower is like, if anyone finds out, I'm in serious trouble. And then it's like his name leaks, and he's like, "Oh no!" And then he's looking around, looks over his shoulder. He's like walking to a store, and then he hears a noise.
You can hear the sniff.
And then he sees like a shadow, and then finally he runs, and he gets chased into an alley, and there's a dead end, and he turns around, and there's a silhouette walking right up, and he's like, and then he goes, "No!" And you hear.
No. He finally thinks he's escaped. He's running from him. Slams the door to his house. He gets in there. And there's a shadow in the corner. Walks out holding a bottle of L'Oreal. I knew you smelled familiar, man. L'Oreal. This flavor has the flavor and name and like make model down. No. Walks over and starts sniffing him.
He should walk up to him and go like, he should say something like, L'Oreal, cucumber melon, August 4th, batch 2360. You think I wouldn't know?
You watched it 2 days ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
He's like, I smelled it on the initial publication. You think I'd miss that shampoo, man?
Actually, it'd be funny if there was like some way to incorporate Joe Biden's enhanced sense of smell where he can just instantly know the perfume, the shampoo. And he's like, the police are trying to solve a murder mystery.
They bring in Joe Biden.
They bring in Joe Biden.
So like a bloodhound?
Yeah.
Go get him, boy. Go get him.
Yeah.
Him and Kamala are cops together.
I know. He finds a shirt, he sniffs it, and he's like, L'Oreal, raspberry.
He's like,
batch 27.
Tracking down J6 protesters running
Or
through the city.
children, missing children. Joe Biden could find them with
Head and
sniff.
Shoulders extra dandruff.
Oh, no, that's a good one. Missing children. And they're like,
He knows all the children's shampoos.
But when they find the kid, then they're like, we did it. We rescued the kid. And then the cops like will talk to each other and be like, well, we couldn't have done that. They shake their hands. Where's Joe? Where's the kid? That's
No. What they do is they give Joe some hair clippings to find the kid, and he goes, you know the deal. I get to keep this. Like,
Is this a funny cartoon for you, or is this
This is a funny cartoon.
That's what we get to
This is a funny cartoon.
All right. Where are we at? Curtis Reynolds says it's not aliens that have taken over, Tim. It's demons.
Yeah.
based same thing though, am I right?
Amen.
I mean, yeah, that's the funny thing about science, like secular interpretation. We talk about simulism and how all of a sudden you have these prominent secular atheist type individuals who are pushing rudimentary Christian beliefs or like rudimentary, Judeo-Christian beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Like a creator created this universe for some purpose and we're living in their construct. It's called a simulation. And I'm like, I recommend that if you believe that, you go talk to theologians who have been studying this stuff for
I love
it. Dude, the thing is, they are so desperate to believe God is fake that they're willing to believe the universe is fake.
But my point is, at the
just a
same time,
simulation.
if you believe we live in a simulation, then what people of faith would call a demon could easily just correlate perfectly with alien.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are like, that you have the legend of jinns and genies or whatever, like, yes, large green men or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Like
Little green men, Tim. LGM. Come on.
Well,
That's
jinns are
the
actually
preferred
huge.
term is LGM. People of little green is what they're called. That's the preferred term. We don't call them aliens. It's offensive.
green men.
They're
And what about the
undocumented.
women?
They're undocumented intelligent
What about
life.
what about the
You
little
don't
green
call
women?
them aliens.
There's only.
What about little green women?
They're only
So
one.
little
they're
green
only
people.
unisex.
People
Yeah.
of little green. That's what I'm saying. Because we don't know their genders. We don't know their gender identity.
JT says legal gay marriage meant that the government schools must teach our kids why Billy has 2 dads and moms. I completely disagree. No, it doesn't. I think
Yeah,
that's
there were books about that way before.
But no, schools don't have to teach kids about any of this stuff.
And they shouldn't.
That's what I'm saying. Like the book Heather Has Two Mommies came out way before gay marriage. Like people were already wanting to enable you to have these kind of conversations with your kids.
But this is the left argument, right? Parents should be able to be like, we don't want sex ed for our kids in schools. End of story. We're done. We don't want them teaching about mom and dad. And if a kid asks another kid about some social consequence, that's between the child peers to talk about amongst themselves. Like the teachers should not be involved in this if the parents don't want it to be. Granted, you have the argument then what actually happens is the advocacy groups demand the schools do it. But that's a big difference between they have to. It's just, as you mentioned, the advocacy groups are the ones driving this. So they don't have to. And we saw that in Florida. All right. Sean Donahue says, you guys should try to get Dr. Patrick Moore on the show. He would reframe your views on climate change. He is a smart fella. I worked for Greenpeace, and one of the reasons that I didn't want to work there was because I started reading about him. And I learned about how he left the organization and what he thought. And then I saw his arguments on nuclear power, and he's completely right. And I'm like, if you look at nuclear power, there's substantially less death and destruction than coal, for instance. But for some reason, they just will not allow us. They oppose it in every way. And I think it's because the climate argument is more so about control than it is about pollution. 100%. I think pollution's bad. I think that we shouldn't pollute as much. I think that there's a lot of cars on the road and we could be more efficient. 100%. Hell, I think that we could have a better use of all of our fossil fuels. But when they come out and they say no nuclear power, I'm like, nah, you're lying.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you know they don't actually care.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I know you're lying because that's clean energy.
You clearly just want to neuter America's energy independence. If you claim to be an environmentalist, but you don't want nuclear power, you are quite transparently just calling for the failure of America to provide energy for its citizens. That's all.
Yeah. Dalton says, I'm about to get out of the Navy after almost a decade. I was on LinkedIn and saw the Navy pull their pride profile picture down on June 2nd. Huge statement from them and the people. Also looking for a job, guys. LOL. We have in our Discord server, we have a bunch of job listings now. So, and the reason we're doing it this way is because we have, when it comes to contractors for a variety of things, it's been so difficult and flaky. So we're like, we're probably going to have a better go of it with people who actually care about what we're building and want to be a part of it than some dude we found, you know, a sign in a yard or at a store or whatever, or word of mouth. So we're going to start digging into our emails and into our members. Good. For the work stuff. The idea was like, we're wondering, you know, I'm saying like it's taking way too long to get all this stuff done. And the issue is that there are normal things like material purchases and permitting, but it'll be like, we'll have a contractor who will say, yeah, I can do it. So it's Monday. I'll come back on Thursday with the plans. They come back on Thursday. Here are the plans. Okay, we approve the plans. Great. We can get started next week, Thursday. Then next week, Thursday, they say, yeah, we're a little delayed. It'll be next Tuesday. Then next Tuesday comes and they say, we're going to start bringing the stuff in. It should be here on Thursday. Then Thursday comes and they're like, yep, shipment's on its way. It'll be here probably tomorrow. Then Friday comes and they're like, now we're going to bring the supplies in. And we're like, great, we can start working next week, Thursday. And I'm just like, now we were 2 months in, just no one started. Nothing's happened. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah, it's very frustrating. So if you can do it in-house and bring in good talent, talent's the most valuable thing you have. It's what your earlier conversation of the young kid who's needs a job. What is the skill that you are offering? And if you have a skill that you can offer, you're invaluable.
I mean, we've been trying to get this building up for like 2 years now. Yeah. It's absolutely insane.
The sad thing is so many people have a skill that is not valuable.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a master's in Congolese poetry. It's like, that's great, but it's not valuable.
Yeah.
Please rewire my house with that.
Yeah. All right, everybody, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Go to timcast.com, download our mobile app for your Android device, and become a member by clicking join us. We're going to have a members-only show live in a few minutes. You don't want to miss it. Those are a lot of fun. And we even have our members call in. And if you're a member at the $25 per month level, or you've been a member at any level for at least 6 months, you can submit questions to call into the show, and we love taking your calls. So again, timcast.com. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to see some super Crazy Skate Moves. Follow me on Instagram at Timcast. Dale, you want to shout anything out?
I just want to thank you all for a great conversation and for further proof that the right is the most tolerant class in the nation. You would never be this level of tolerance if this was a group of leftists with the what I was saying. So I want to thank you for that. Daniel Turner, Power of the Future, powerofthefuture.com if you love energy, fossil fuels issues, or if you love sheep, Bristol Farm, Virginia on Instagram. Preeminent sheep farmers of Virginia, Bristol Farm, Virginia.
Yeah.
We got some beautiful sheep.
Right on.
They are beautiful.
Sheep are good people.
My name's Seamus Coughlin. I do cartoons. I got a channel called Freedom Tunes. We just released a video today called The Trial of Donald J. Trump. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. People are laughing at it right now. They seem to be eating it up. So go over there, check it out. I think you'll love it. Hit that like button. Push us up through the algorithm. I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Go to freedomtunes.com and become a member for $10 a month, and you'll get an extra cartoon each week. Have a nice day.
Do you public speak for a living? Because
Yeah.
the ending of that was not clear.
What did you not hear what I said? Do you want to say it for me then?
It's my turn.
Say it for me aloud.
I couldn't.
Correct me.
I do know you have a cool podcast.
Because you can do it better than me. So why don't you say what I said?
Well, that and cartoons I do better than you now that you've moved on to journalism.
Oh!
No, I'm just kidding. No, Seamus has cool stuff. Definitely check that out. I am personally going to say that you should go to timcast.com, click on the read tab, see all the work from me and all the other journalists. You should also follow at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. It's the best. If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b, and you can follow me on Twitter at HCBrimlow. Thank you so much.
I am Serge.com. I am indeed pushing the buttons. I don't talk much on the show that sometimes just don't feel like it. But yeah, I hope you guys follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever you guys want to, at Serge.com. Spell it out.
We will see you all over at timcast.com in a few minutes. Thanks for hanging out.